The number one story of the day, of course, is the virus exploding in places like Texas and Arizona, Florida, and, of course, its return to some of the states it's battered before, Washington State, New York State. It's everywhere, actually. The CDC chief says that the coronavirus cases may be 10 times higher than reported, a factor of 10. In the New York Times this morning, the reason is given in their lead story about the virus, headlined as "Virus Surges, Younger People Account for, quote, disturbing number of cases." That's actually good news. I hate to put pop the bubble in the New York Times. It's better when younger people have it than when older people have it. This increase reflects a simple reality, the New York Times reports. Since many states have reopened bars, restaurants, and offices, the coronavirus has been allowed to spread more widely across communities, including to more young people. People in their 20s and 30s are likely to go out socializing, experts say. 20s and 30-year-olds are more likely to go out socializing, experts say. Dwayne, how about that? Have you got an expert to come up with that one, that 20 and 30-year-olds are more likely to go out to clubs and bars? That's a real expert call right there. Dr. Robert Redfield, the director of the Centers for Disease Control, said younger people have helped fuel the increase in known coronavirus infections. And then in the past, many of those infections went undiagnosed. Yeah, okay, so look, that's just the way it's going to be. Texas has paused its reopening, slowing down, saying we're not going to urge you to get out as much and as fast as often. But the good news is we're at nowhere near hospital capacity. Arizona, which is the hardest hit with the oldest population, so has plenty of beds, plenty of ICU capacity. Hospitalization rates have dropped dramatically. If you get it, it's nasty. If you're younger, it's not deadly. If you haven't got an underlying condition, it's not going to kill you. If you're not obese, people with asthma, people with the real killers are coronary heart disease and diabetes. Those are the killers in combination with the virus. So be alert. The Federal Reserve has capped aid to stocks that are doing dividends, and they have banned buybacks by U.S. banks. They don't want their aid to go back into the pockets of bankers, and that's good. Here's the most interesting story of the day, and I think it tells us everything. In fact, I'm going to make this the business story of the day, brought to you by Birch Gold. Birch Gold is a great sponsor of this program. They help you diversify your portfolio into precious metals and silvers, especially your retirement accounts. All you have to do is send my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747. Text Hugh to 474747 or go to hughgold.com. Whether you want to buy precious metals for your own physical possession, some of you like to do that and put it in the safety deposit box, or you want to take your $100,000 in retirement and put 10% or 15 or 20% into actual gold metal bars that are locked up in a depository that Birch Gold manages. They've got the highest rating from the Better Business Bureau. You can trust Birch Gold. They're not a fly-by-night group. They've just been doing this for years. It's blocking and tackling of wealth preservation. Gold this morning is at, I haven't even checked the gold price this morning because I still believe, it's up to $1,774. Oh, I wish you bought at $1,400. I wish your savings would now be up 30% if you'd bought at $1,400. But $1,774, it's still rock solid. Oh, it's at the top of the market. I don't know. What's Amazon at? Amazon closed yesterday at $2,754. I was telling you it's the only stock I bought back at $1,500. I think it's a $4,000 stock. And this is why. Here's the story and why inflation is coming and why gold might be your best choice. Nike sales dragged down by store closures. That's the headline in the Wall Street Journal. You think, oh, bad news on the way. Nike sales fell 38% in the last quarter because of the closure of their very cool stores, right? People like Nike stores. But read a little bit on. Chief Executive John Donahue said Nike had reopened most of its stores globally. They may have to reclose some just like Apple has done, and benefited from its digital apps and online sales, which grew 75% in one quarter. Therein lies the story of the American economy. We have not stopped buying. We have continued to consume. We have continued to generate wealth. We have continued to give ourselves those things, whether it's Lululemon workout pants or Nike shoes or a vacation to a remote island where you can canoe. We have continued to drive places. We're not flying as much, but we are consuming. Americans are consumers. Now, you can bemoan that sort of an economy. You can wish that more people tithed and gave to the poor and gave to their religious institutions. You can ask for all those things, but you still have got to look at the facts. And the facts is what we have is the forced march of the American economy online. It was gradually taking place, a slow, long ramp. As people aged out who preferred to shop in stores enjoyed the experience, well, they now have learned to enjoy the experience sometimes collectively going shopping online with a friend via connected devices. And when I see that Nike sales fell 38%, but their online sales went up 75%, I say to myself, this is going to go on and on and on. I tweeted earlier, Costco, Walmart, Target, Amazon. Boy, if I'm buckling down for the future. I'm not a financial advisor. I didn't stay in a Holiday Inn, and the only stock I ever buy one at a time is Amazon. And that's because Amazon's got AWS, the cloud business. I just think that's unlimited. But those online retailers, maybe Nike's made it into the group too because of their ability to switch online. The big brands, but I like people that sell a lot of things. That's Costco, Walmart. I wish there was a fund that had Target, Walmart, Costco, and Amazon in it. That would be easy to follow. Like I say, I only follow one thing at a time. But the business story of the day, online to stay. The virus will eventually be defeated. Probably by this time next year, the virus will be, vaccine will be widespread. The therapeutics will caught up. I had an interesting conversation yesterday with a veteran of the media industry, one of the very best reporters out there. You know this reporter by sight. Long talk. We are both of the same age, early 60s. We're both in great shape. And we both intend to stay that way. And we socially distance. We went to a restaurant last night, fetching Mrs. Hugh and I did. Patio restaurant, got there early, in a corner by ourselves, one server interaction, had a wonderful dinner and left. Wore our masks as we walked around people, but we are ourselves feeling great, doing our miles, our workouts, we spent a lot of time staying in shape. And my reporter friend said they do the same thing. They're the couple. The husband and the wife, they do the same thing because they don't want to get the disease, because every day the therapeutics get better. Every day we're closer to a vaccine. So the longer you can postpone getting the virus, the better. But young people realize it's a miserable 2 weeks. Their calculation, it's a miserable 2 weeks at max. Maybe I'll get the asymptomatic kind. So there are three kinds: asymptomatic, bad, stay at home and suffer for 2 weeks, and the stuff that puts you in the hospital. If you go in the hospital, you might die if you've got coronary heart disease and diabetes below that. I don't know what the rules are for asthma. I don't want to chance it. But and the older you are, the less you've got to fight with. You're already got underlying conditions that are terrible. But we know about this. We know everything about this disease. They can reopen Texas, and they can say to the 20, 30, and 40-year-olds, come on out. They can reopen schools. There's a rebellion brewing in Northern Virginia, which I caught wind of yesterday, where they've said, we're going to open schools 2 days a week and long-distance learning. And the parents are banging off the roof. They can't do that. Well, you know what that's driven by? Teachers' union. Older teachers justifiably don't want to go to work. Well, school districts furlough them. And maybe you give them benefits. I don't know what the teachers' contracts are, but you don't want to bring 65-year-old teachers to work. Do what Hillsdale College is going to do. All the kids are coming back. The young teachers are going to teach in the classroom, and the old teachers are going to teach by remote Zoom. I mean, this is not hard. And you say, well, the old teachers aren't very good in the classroom anyway. Well, that's because you've got a teachers union that is blocking the education of your children. The idea of not doing school, now that we know with great certainty that only the tiniest number of kids get this disease, the Kawasaki syndrome-like disease, it's in the hundreds across the entire United States. We know the kids are safe. It is far more destructive of their life to keep them out of school for a year. And some of them need a classroom. If you've got a mom or dad at home who know what they're doing and can do homeschooling, that's great. But if they haven't got a mom or dad, or if they've got a chaotic home environment, or they're not eating at home and they need their federally funded school food, keeping them out of school is just ruining their life. And school districts have to realize their job is not to take care of teachers' unions. Their job is those kids. And there are going to be some interesting school board elections this fall. Because if your schools are closed, throw them out. Just throw them all out. They got to sit down with the union and say, this is the way it's happening. Go on strike if you want. Let the world see you're protecting your older teachers at the cost of these younger children. And that's exactly what's happening in Fairfax County, Virginia, and it will not stand. They will have to bend because that is just criminal to the children. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Friday edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by the Job Creators Network Foundation. Attention business owners. As America gets back to work, will customers know you're there? With little warning, the coronavirus attacked our nation and our well-being in ways we never anticipated. The tragic loss of life, unprecedented economic upheaval, and a shattered sense of security has left many individuals and businesses in shambles. While the aftershocks could be felt for months to come, they may not have to. There is hope for an extraordinary turnaround of your bottom line. But will you be prepared for America's grand reopening? All signs point to the biggest business opportunity of our lifetime, coming as early as this summer. A recent survey of local advertisers shows a 10-point jump in the number of local advertisers who plan to maintain or increase their spending. 1 in 4 businesses expect to spend more in advertising by the end of June, and more than half expect to restart or surge their spending by this summer. As the numbers forecast increased spending from advertisers across the country, will your message be seen and heard? Will your business benefit from the pent-up consumer demand? Salem Surround is prepared to help you deliver the right advertising message to reach all potential customers wherever they are. Your business can be ready for a post-COVID-19 economy, but the time to act is now. Be at the front of the line as our economy begins to fire on all cylinders once again. For a free assessment of your marketing message and strategy, visit salemsurround.com or contact your local media strategist today.
This is Lon Hee Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lon Hee Chen.
ADF, fighting for those whose liberties are being violated.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Welcome back, America. Spotify's 50 Great Songs of Summer includes Jesse's Girl, Don't Ask Me Why. Spotify thinks there are some people out there that make all their money on one song and you hear it forever, but then you can't imagine the song not existing. Pretty Woman was played last night on the patio where we were having dinner, and I looked at the fetching Miss Hewitt and I said, can you imagine Pretty Woman not existing? And I don't even want to tell you who I had to step in for on that song. Let me tell you, going back to my earlier story brought to you by Birch Gold, I didn't finish the punchline. Earlier this year, an analyst at Piper Meiber, April, after the first round of COVID numbers came in, an analyst with Jefferies said Amazon was going to go to $4,000 a share. Amazon is at, I don't want to mislead you. I think it's at $27.50, but I'm not sure. I don't know it offhand. Let me look here. It is at $27.54, up $20 yesterday. So the street yesterday unleashed this story on you. For Amazon's core e-commerce business, all signs point to a big second quarter. They had a big first quarter, which marks the first one that overlapped entirely with the COVID-19 pandemic. An increase in demand for home delivery should deliver a major boost to Amazon's top line. On average, analysts polled by FactSet are expecting overall revenue of $80.6 billion for the quarter ending June 30th, up from $63.4 billion in the first-year quarter. But don't get your hopes up, the writer says, for a corresponding boost in profits, wrote Wedbush analyst Michael Pachter in a note this week. He raised his price target for Amazon to $3,050 from $2,750, but he says they're going to spend all the money on improvements, not on profits. Guess what? I invest in Amazon. I don't want them to give dividends to people. I want them to build infrastructure. I want them to buy airplanes. I want them to build warehouses, especially in Warren, Ohio, if you're lifting Jeff Bezos. There's a huge opportunity in Warren, Ohio to go put an Amazon plant or an Amazon distribution center. But they're growing. Amazon shares are up 45% to year to date, and they closed up 0.7% yesterday. And I don't know what they're going to do during the course of the day. I don't make predictions. I'm not the prophet or son of a prophet, or Costco, or Walmart, or Target. All I know is COVID is forcing the most productive change in American economy. The great advantage of a disease like this is to accelerate the trends in the economy, which are going to long-term increase the productivity of the American worker. They don't have that in the People's Republic of China. They do not have that in the European Union. They've got that here, whether it's driverless cars, FedEx, Amazon, Costco, Target, Walmart. We've got that. We've got the infrastructure. We've got the colleges and the sciences. There's an upside to everything, and there's an upside to this virus. The only downside is Joe Biden, because he could kill this thing. He could kill this thing dead. Here is Donald Trump last night on the Hannity show talking about Joe Biden and the fact that he just does not appear to have the capacity to be president. Cut number 22. What, 22?
Yeah. But my most important job is to run this country great. I built it once so great. Turn it off, now we're doing it again. And it's happening.
And you're ready to roll.
It's going to be better than ever. But here's the thing. I've got to do that, folks. This is serious business. We can't have somebody. That's a mistake. That's not a mistake. That's a serious error. When he says he's running for the U.S. Senate, that's a serious error. When he says, I'm going to beat Joe Biden, which got very little coverage, that's not like an error. Gee, it's a slip-up. That's a serious error. So when you just told me that, I hadn't heard that just happened, I guess.
Yes, it did.
That's a serious error. That's not a permissible type of error, because there's something going on. And
there is something going. Cut number 27. This is what the president says will happen under Biden. Cut number 27.
He is a candidate that will destroy this country. And he may not do it himself. He will be run by a radical fringe group of lunatics that will destroy our country. And people have to know that.
The election is a choice between surging economic growth back to the blue-collar boom that Trump did once, that the Chinese destroyed and he's doing a second time, or incoherence, absolute incoherence at the top, and radical leftists running every agency with their 6,000 jobs that they'll hold. Radical leftists, AOC and the squad take over the government. That's the choice on the ballot. Joe Biden is a figurehead and not a particularly compelling figurehead. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by the Heritage Foundation.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Are the polls accurate that Biden is quite ahead? What is your read?
If the election were held tomorrow, Biden would win. The polls are not accurate. They're push polls, which means that the polling companies want a certain outcome because they're paid by corporations that want that outcome. And so they do little things like poll more Democrats than Republicans, and then they say, well, there's more registered Democrats than Republicans in the country. Well, that's true, but that doesn't mean there's going to be a turnout that has an 8-point spread like you do. And then they have the independents. What independents? They never say. So if you're going to call San Francisco and somebody's going to be an independent, which the polling companies quite often do, you're going to get a liberal take on your poll, and that's called push polling. Anyway, Biden would win tomorrow, but he's a weak candidate, and Trump can exploit him in the debates. If COVID diminishes, and it's
okay, I want you to play that over the music before I go to
that will ignite the economy, which is really what Donald Trump is all about. So all the other stuff is secondary to COVID diminishing and the economy surging again, because the radical Black Lives Matter movement situation works against Biden. As I said, most people don't want this radical left approach, and you saw Trump exploit that in Tulsa on Saturday. If things go well for the country, Trump wins. If they continue to be chaotic, he probably loses.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
I'm talking with Kate Anderson, Senior Counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom. Kate Anderson, this could have been a pretty easy fix. If Congress had wanted to expand the definition of sex to include sexual orientation, they could have done that.
Yes, and actually this issue was before Congress on numerous occasions, and Congress has not added the concepts of sexual orientation or gender identity to this federal employment law. So Justice Alito, when he was writing his dissenting opinion in this case, he said that the court was legislating from the bench by making a change that Congress had declined to make, and there's definitely some truth in that.
I know that the ADF has been involved in representing female athletes who have been challenged by transgender male athletes. How does this decision affect all of that?
The case you're talking about in Connecticut, we represent a couple of girls who, in that state, there are 2 male athletes who identify as female who have taken 15 state track and field championship records over the last 3 years, and all of the opportunities that come with those. So there's definitely an issue before the courts on women's sports and the fairness for women to be able to compete and to be able to enjoy the equal opportunities, and particularly the scholarship opportunities that come from that. So this decision did not reach that, and the majority opinion actually said it doesn't reach women's athletics, but we have every expectation that activists will try to use the logic to move it into that context, and we will be there to try to protect women's equal opportunities.
Keep up with what's trending. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
So what it first started as a certain type of message, now the Marxists are in full control. And what do they want to do? And they've made it very clear in the last few days, it's come around all full circle. They want to separate us from our history. They want to separate us from our religion. And in the last day, now one of the leaders of one of the radical movements is saying, let's go after the churches and the statues of Christ and the stained glass windows. And that, of course, is their strategic error of the first magnitude. because they're bumping into 70 million Protestants, 70 million Catholics. But that's what Marx did, right? He was the first identity politics. He separated the capitalists from the workers. That didn't work out so good. So now they just separate you from everybody. You're the oppressor or you're the oppressed. And they put you in a bucket, a category, and they come after you. And there's no repentance. There's no forgiveness of sins. And Marx, of course, said that ethics and religion is the superstructure and it's all fake anyway. So if you're a naive American and you think that everybody believes that it's wrong to kill because that's in the Judeo-Christian tradition, you would be sadly misguided right now, because there are people who don't have any ethics at all, and they'll tell you as much.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Unnecessarily, now we have over 120 million dead from COVID.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That's Joe Biden. Just wanted to let Sonny Bunch know that whatever he's recommending, there are 120 million fewer Americans to watch it, according to Joe Biden yesterday. Sonny, how are you?
Good. Sad. Mourning the 120 million.
The 120 million gone overnight. It's been a bad, at 120,000, it's pretty bad as it is, but 120 million overnight, it's just pretty remarkable. Joe Biden is on top of everything. I wonder if you talked to him about what he watches on TV, because I got to find that news channel that's cluing him in.
Yeah, no, I am myself in mourning the theatrical schedule. Yesterday Warner Brothers said that they're pushing Tenet back to August 12th. The new Christopher Nolan movie. So that's going to get pushed back. Mulan will be pushed back. I'm guessing a bunch of other stuff will be pushed back as well.
They're getting more pushback than my dates with the homecoming queen in high school. They never happened.
Yeah, we're just never going to see new movies again. It's interesting. I mean, in Dallas, there are a couple theaters open. One of them is the Cinemark 17, which is a nice little chain. But what they have in theaters, let me just read to you. They've got Back to the Future, they've got Jaws, they've got Space Jam, Wonder Woman, Get Out, Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Matrix, Mad Max, Fury Road, Blade Runner. It's a bunch of old movies, and they're good. And I am kind of tempted, frankly, to go to the movie theater. But at the same time, I can't imagine that there are a ton of people, especially as COVID cases continue to rise. Now we're not quite at 120 million dead, but as the numbers keep ticking up, I don't see a ton of people going to go see those movies. And if there's nothing new in the movie theaters, and if stuff keeps getting pushed back, I don't know what's going to happen here.
It's got a horrible side effect too, which is all the Hollywood people tweet more. And they're the dumbest people on the planet. That is a side effect we haven't talked about yet. What has Netflix picked up the slack here? Is Amazon Prime coming through? What do we hear from Hulu? Disney doing anything?
Well, there are a couple of new movies out this weekend that are similar. Let's call them a simulacrum of Hollywood movies, right? They're on Netflix. You've got a new Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams film.
Can I stop you for one second? When you use the word simulacrum, the Steelers fan thinks somebody broke their leg. They think the fibula, tibula, and the simulacrum are all together. Would you please not do that? We have Steelers people in Pittsburgh listening this morning.
It's simulacrum. It's like simulation. How about that?
Okay, that's close, because they thought the simulacrum was way down on the thigh bone or something.
We do have two essentially simulations of new movies out this week for people who are desperate for something new and something theater-like. We'll go with Netflix first. So Netflix has a movie out starring Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams called Eurovision: The Story of Fire Saga, and it's essentially a parody film about the Eurovision contest in Europe. Are you familiar with Eurovision?
Not a lick. I can spell it.
Eurovision. So Eurovision is basically, it's kind of like nationalist American Idol, where you have every European country sends one act to wherever the thing is being hosted that year. and the winner, you know, wins some sort of recording contract or whatever. But also, it's just a national pride sort of thing, right? Like the winning country is filled and imbued with pride. It's massively popular in Europe. It's viewed
this could be a mockumentary. Is this a mockumentary by Christopher Nolan?
No. It's not exactly like a Christopher Guest style mockumentary. It's really just like a straight up parody of this. So, you know,
Christopher Guest. That's what I was saying about Christian Show and that. Not Christopher Nolan Batman. Christopher Guest. It's not one of those.
It's not one of those. No.
Oh, rats.
It's just a comedy. It's just a comedy. You know, look, your tolerance for this movie is going to depend on how much you like the goofy songs and the goofy performances. And I know a lot of people who really are into the Eurovision thing, and I don't want to judge them, but they're weird.
Let's not judge, but how long have they been off their rocker?
They're weirdos, right? Like it's a show that it's very, very popular in Europe, but here in America we look askance at that sort of thing.
We definitely know that, don't we? By the way, my lower third right now says I'm Sonny Bunch. So I just want you to know the lower third on our YouTube channel shows I'm Sonny Bunch. That's terrific.
Oh, that's great. That's great. This movie is fine. It's fine. It's kind of funny. If you're into the whole Eurovision thing, I think you'll find it much funnier. I am not, and so I did not find it that funny. And Will Ferrell's appeal can be limited if you're not into exactly what he's doing in any given movie.
Is he better than Holmes and Sherlock?
Yeah. Oh, well, that movie was terrible, though. I feel like
my wife laughed through the whole thing. She's embarrassed by it. She's the only person in America who laughed because she loved putting Queen Victoria in the trunk. She's the only person in America that liked that movie.
I mean, look. So again, it's not a good movie, though.
It's terrible. She embarrassed all of us. She laughed so loud because she's the slapstick person. There are some people on this planet who believe in slapstick. She thought Ace Ventura: Pet Detective was the funniest thing she'd ever seen.
Well, I did too, but I was 10.
Yes, well, that's what.
You know,
no telling. A woman of high taste and refined talent, but nevertheless, there's people who are slapstick out there. What is the other offering? Because Eurovision's not going to get a lot of this audience, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, look, I give it a soft recommend. Again, if you're into the goofiness of Eurovision, you'll kind of like this. But it wasn't really for me. On Amazon, so there's a movie called My Spy, which stars Dave Bautista, who is best known as probably Drax, the very literal Guardian from Guardians of the Galaxy. He's also a wrestler.
Oh, I love Drax. Oh, he's cool.
I like Dave Bautista. I think he's actually an interested and underrated actor. He's very good in the opening moments of Blade Runner 2049. He's in the opening scene of that movie. He plays a droid, whatever they're called, I forget, a replicant who has run away and is hunted down. But he has a very specific body size, and that specific body size is like trapezoidal.
Yes.
Right? He's basically a walking trapezoid.
Yes.
Which again, there are things that this works very well for. For instance, as Drax.
Yes.
And he is now going through his funny Arnold Schwarzenegger phase, I guess, because he's in this movie, My Spy. He was in another one a couple of last year where he played a cop who hijacked an Uber, who had to solve a crime while being driven around by the Uber guy who was played by Kumail Nanjiani.
Oh yes, I like that show.
Stuber. That was what that movie was called. So My Spy is him. He's watching after a small girl who discovers that he is a CIA agent, and the small girl demands to be taught the mysteries of the CIA. And it's very funny and fish out of watery. This is the intent.
I think I saw some previews for this.
Well, let me tell you, Hugh, you've been seeing previews for this movie for the last 2 years.
Okay, good.
This movie was supposed to come out in early 2019, January of 2019, and the studio behind it, STX, kept pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back, and it was supposed to come out, essentially, I think it was supposed to come out the week after the COVID lockdown started. So then it got pushed back again. Eventually, STX just sold it to Amazon for some amount of money. Who knows? And it is finally,
there's Amazon again.
Later, 18 months later, it is premiering on Prime Video. And again, this is like a simulation of a Hollywood movie. It's a movie that was going to be in theaters.
It's going to make $1 bazillion. Sorry, mark my words. I spent the first half of the show talking about how Amazon is the great beneficiary of the move online for everything, the stay-at-home movement, COVID. Now they're producing movies on Amazon Prime, which are original, in this case, My Spy. And so a stock that was at 2,000 at the beginning of this is going to be at 4,000 at the end of this. It's going to double in value because of small things like this are cumulative.
Yeah, it's fascinating that the Amazon Prime Video service, and this is going to be weird and businessy, so just bear with me for a second. But the Amazon Prime Video service is weirdly underutilized. So, more than half of households in America have Amazon Prime, but I don't know what percentage of them understand that this also comes with a free streaming video service, right?
Oh, interesting.
And
I use it all the time. I think
I use it.
Yellowstone's
I use it
on
all the time too.
Yeah.
I use it all the time too. Like for instance, right now you can watch Knives Out, which was just in theaters.
Yep,
that's free on it. A movie called Crawl, which was a horror movie about an alligator attack that takes place during a hurricane. Which again, like sounds like the most ridiculous thing, but was one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite movies of last year. Is free on Prime right now. But anyway. And now they have My Spy. So, I think what they're doing with My Spy is they're trying to remind people that they have this whole free video streaming service that is almost essentially just a total bonus and add-on to the service that brings them their goods within 24 to 48 hours, right? It is not the thing that most people sign up to Amazon Prime for, but it is a thing that will help them stay there.
How did they get a control of My Spy?
They just bought it from STX. So the distributor is a company called STX. STX, I think, realized they have something of a stinker on their hands here, and it's not good, Hugh.
It's funny. I get something to do this weekend. So, big question. They're sitting on $80 billion of profit in one quarter. I just did the Amazon story. I always disclose I own Amazon stock. They made $80 billion. Can they go out and buy all of these languishing releases and throw them up on Amazon Prime and increase the number, the last 10% of America that hadn't become Amazon Prime members yet?
Well, the answer to that is yes, they could. I mean, they'd be better off just buying Warner Brothers or buying a studio, frankly, and using whatever they have already made if they're going to do that, because the studios don't want to unload their content because, once they start doing that, they're going to have nothing to put out once theaters do.
Which studios are for sale?
Well, technically, everything is for sale, Hugh. Everything is
true.
for sale at all times. So,
That's true.
if Amazon, it would be interesting to see what would happen if Amazon went to Warner Brothers and said, we want to buy. But the thing is, it's all through conglomerates now, right? So they would have to go to Time Warner, right? They would have to go to Time Warner, AOL, Yahoo, whatever.
Jeff Bezos is the one guy in America, other than Trump, whose phone calls are always returned, and he actually may get more than Trump does. Sonny Bunch, at Sonny Bunch on Twitter. I hope you have your podcast soon. Thank you, Sonny. I'm watching My Spy on Amazon Prime this weekend, thanks to Sonny Bunch. I'm also taking, here's our resident movie film critic, I'm also taking ReliefFactor.com, as you see right here, because the weekend is upon us. It's Friday. We all love Friday. Friday is the best day of the week. Friday is the best day of the week, because while you do go to work, you never let us know it's the last day of work. You take your ReliefFactor.com. Down the hatch. That went down a little bit wrong. But I take it every morning because I want to be active every weekend. So ReliefFactor.com, $19.95 is the starter pack. You get started on ReliefFactor.com by going to ReliefFactor.com. And when you do, also pause a moment, go to HonorBoundCoffee.com and start getting your coffee delivered along with your Relief Factor and everything else, because HonorBound Coffee makes the best coffee in the world, and every dollar of profit made by HonorBound Coffee goes to support military families across this great United States. So relieffactor.com and honorboundcoffee.com. Do it both during the break. Come back. Tarzana Joe, the poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show, is next.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
It's hard for us to get our heads around how cynical this is, that they're using the death of this man, George Floyd, to launch a political revolution which will harm everyone of every color. I will say it until I can't say it anymore. People need to wake up to the evil of this organization. And what you just said is only the most recent dramatic example. So go
sure,
back.
and it is the next phase of what this movement, because you're right, Black Lives Matter is not, as a movement, is not about Black lives genuinely. If we really wanted to talk about that, we would talk about defunding Planned Parenthood, because Black mothers in a lot of cities have the highest rate of abortions for Black children compared to other groups. And so if we really wanted to talk about Black lives and what this organization supposedly stands for, we would be having a different conversation. But they're using this so-called movement to truly revolutionize America and to undermine Western civilization and the founding principles of America, which is that all men, all human beings are created equal. We're endowed by our Creator with our unalienable rights. And among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They want to take those down. And so they are trying to destroy society by defunding the police, by having total anarchy in the streets, no system of a civil society. They've attacked the family through promoting abortion, through attacking the nuclear family, through an organized society. And now the last thing, they're coming after the church. And so Sean King tweeted this saying, calling for burning the churches. And so what I did yesterday on the plane, Eric, it struck me that Christians right now need to be bold. We need to call out the truth.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Joined now by Tarzana Joe, the poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Good morning, Joe. How are you?
Good morning, you and yourself. How are you?
Terrific.
Okay, well, should we get to the poem? I guess we should. In all the sturm and drama that we're seeing on the streets, there's proof of that old axiom that history repeats. The tearing down of statues is nothing really new. From age to age to age to age, it's what destroyers do. To those who think this trivial and protests like this harmless, go see that statue in the Louvre. You know, the one that's armless. Once it stood for beauty and a culture with no peers, then lost and buried in the ground for some 2,000 years. By every mark of excellence and artistry we measure, what could have persuaded men to topple such a treasure? Ask them to explain, although you know they truly can't, for overturning Lincoln, a Cervantes, or a Grant. Perhaps atop a Henge's stone a great colossus stood. It might have shared its secrets if now it only could. But in some untold story, another seized the crown, the mob was set on fire, and it all came crashing down. Of all the sacred verities that man has ever stated, from reservoirs of thoughtlessness is ignorance created. That's Ozymandias II by Tarzana Joe.
Did you know, Joe, that they toppled a statue to a Wisconsin Union man who had fought against slavery his entire life?
A Norwegian immigrant, much to the distress of my wife,
Well,
also of Norwegian stock.
I did not know that, but I hope is she descended from the young man?
No, she's not.
No family. I just think it's complete ignorance, as you say in the poem. Ignorance is abroad in the land.
And it's not bliss.
Oh, no, it is not bliss. Tarzana Joe, well said. Are you taking commissions at tarzanajoe.com?
Very busy week, Hugh. A very busy week. So I think the country's opening up for poetry.
Oh, that's good news. You can get yours done by writing Joe at tarzanajoe@reagan.com. Rates are reasonable. tarzanajoe@reagan.com. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Now, you know that Joe Biden was out on the campaign trail yesterday. He came out of the basement, but it's not really coming. He didn't take any questions, but he still managed to make news. You just have to hear this again. Cut number 17, Joe Biden in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, yesterday.
Unnecessarily, now we have over 120 million dead from COVID.
All right, so Joe's sitting there, hey, we got 120 million dead from COVID. Of course, that's nuts. And Sean Hannity asked President Trump about this last night, and President Trump said this, cut 22.
I love people. Yeah. But my most important job is to run this country great. I built it once so great. Turn it off, now we're doing it again. And it's happening.
And you're ready to roll.
It's going to be better than ever. But here's the thing. I've got to do that, folks. You know, this is serious business. We can't have somebody. That's a mistake. That's not a mistake. That's a serious error. When he says he's running for the U.S. Senate, that's a serious error. When he says, I'm going to beat Joe Biden, which got very little coverage, that's not like an error, gee, it's a slip-up. That's a serious error. So when you just told me that, I hadn't heard that just happened, I guess.
Yes, it did.
That's a serious error. That's not a permissible type of error, because there's something going on. And we can't take that. You know, it's wonderful to say, gee, I feel sorry, or it's too bad, because I do. Except we're talking about the presidency of the United States. And
he's being gentle. The president's being gentle, but you and I know what he's talking about, and you can't. They got to swap him out. They just have to swap out Joe Biden. Yeah, he's leading in the polls, but the idea of electing someone, 120 million people dead, unaware of that, and it's not a one-off. It is again and again and again. Nevertheless, when you hear 120 million, I don't want you to be freaked out. Flattenthefear.com, all right? Don't forget that. Flattenthefear.com is a project of our wonderful sponsor, JobCreatorsNetwork.com. Put together by Bernie Marcus, the founder of Home Depot, co-founder of Home Depot. And he and his boys and girls over at flattenthefear.com want you to get all the statistics, all of them, on where it is safe to go, what it is safe to do. I should call them men and women. I'm just talking about colloquialism, but I'm afraid that media matters. They've got emo at work saying Hugh Hewitt called Bernie Sanders boys and girls. Media matters. I don't even know if they're still alive. I hope they are. I hope they're fine over there, but I haven't heard from them in a while. They've given up trying to bother me, I think, because we know that emo can't bother me. But what does bother me is people who overreact to the virus. It is not a threat to you if you're young. You may get sick unless you have an underlying condition. It's not a threat to school children. They should be back in school in the fall with teachers under the age of 50. It's a threat if you're over 65, if you're fat, if you are heart disease ridden, if you've got diabetes, stay away from people. But other than that, go to flattenthefear.com because data matters. Data matters. I also want to tell all of you Larry Elder's movie, it is so provocatively titled, in order to get your attention, UncleTom.com. Uncle Tom, or go to SalemNow.com. There's a big headline over at HughHewitt.com. Larry Elder has interviewed every black conservative he could find in America of prominence and asked them what it's like to be an African-American conservative. Put it all together in an hour, 40-minute movie that has broken every record you could possibly imagine. Because Joe Biden, when he said, if you're not voting for Joe Biden, you ain't black, that's not true. And there's no movie like Uncle Tom. These people are not afraid to be called Uncle Tom because they believe in freedom. Larry Elder's done a great service. Go and watch Uncle Tom. Do so via HughHewitt.com. You'll find yourself amazed at the courage of these African-American conservatives and at their willingness to take a stand. Come right back. Hour number 2 of the Hugh Hewitt Show is straight ahead.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
If you could ask one question to black or white leftists, if you only have a chance to ask one, and there are a lot of contenders for that title, but I would ask this: is white racism the greatest problem in American black life? Or is the 80% out of wedlock birth rate, not being born with a man married to your mother, which is the bigger problem in black life? Now, to even ask that question now would probably get you untwittered. Just to ask the question. The suppression of free speech is unprecedented in American history. Do you realize the time we are living through? And it is being done not by the government. Not at all. It is being done in the private sphere by the tech companies that run everything: Twitter, YouTube, Google, Facebook. This is unprecedented in history, let alone American history. There was really one thing that liberals, or even, well, there weren't that many leftists, liberals and conservatives always agreed on free speech, which is why you should see No Safe Spaces. Two really important movies out now, Uncle Tom and No Safe Spaces. You owe it to the country and to yourself to see both.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on
I just graduated from Arcadia University.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
So they say what they need to say in order to advance the agenda. That's why the politician Barack Obama plays the race card as jointly as does Eric Holder and Al Sharpton, except it's much more subtle. If I had a son, he looked like Trayvon. What the hell does that even mean? There's a place called Ferguson. Yeah, a place called Ferguson where Michael Brown did not have his hands up, did not say don't shoot. And Dorian Johnson pretty much set the whole country on fire by lying and saying he had his hands up and said don't shoot. He lied. And it's not like these things haven't been studied, for crying out loud. You don't think the federal government has an interest in finding out whether or not they are engaging in institutional racism? Since the mid-'60s, the DOJ has conducted what's called the Police Public Contact Survey. Every 3 years, interview over 60,000 Americans. Have you had a contact with the police in the last year? If the answer is yes, what was your contact like? How were you treated? What was said? Was there any use of force? They cannot find any pattern at all of any kind of disproportionate use of force against black people. Not there. Not like they haven't tried. During the Bill Clinton administration, survey of the 75 largest counties. Are blacks being unfairly prosecuted? Are blacks being unfairly giving longer sentences? Are blacks being unfairly arrested? No, no, and no. Virtually all big city police departments now require their officers to record the race of traffic stops. They've been doing it now for years. Where's the class action lawsuit? Where's the ACLU? Why have you joined together and filed a class action lawsuit based on now the data to prove your assertion? Because the data prove the opposite. Cops don't go in the profession to be racist. My goodness.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Issued June 24th, 2020. Re. Michael T. Flynn, petitioner on emergency petition for a writ of mandamus from the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. Order. Upon consideration of the emergency petition for a writ of mandamus, the responses thereto, and the reply, the briefs of amici curiae in support of the parties, and the argument by the counsel, it is ordered that Flynn's petition for a writ of mandamus be granted. General Flynn, welcome to America First. Are you on the line?
I sure am, Sebastian. Yeah, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate the support from you and your listeners during this almost 4 years of going through this. And I'll have a lot more to say later on, but that was a very powerful motion that the appeals court had, and rightly so. They're basically following the law, and I think it renews, in some respects, a sense of confidence in the justice system of America today. So it's really, really great news for our family and great news for American justice.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Hey, folks, it's the Eric Metaxas Show. I'm talking to Charlie Kirk. This is why you didn't go to college and why I scorn the college that I attended. They are no longer doing their job, and they're producing people like Mayor de Blasio, who's thrilled that his daughter was arrested by cops that are theoretically under him, trying to protect property and so on and so forth. So he is signaling that he is not with the cops and he's not with the people who own the businesses that are being looted. He's making it clear that he is not for them.
They don't have grounding principles, Eric. So for example, you and I, we are yoked and grounded by the Bible. Like that, this is our framework, right? And so
at least we hope to be, right? In other words, we're not just saying that. We really believe in this thing called truth, and we really want to do the right thing by everyone. Even if we screw up sometimes, we have a standard.
And so it is not moral relativism. So for example, looting in 1870 would be considered wrong under the Christian ethic as it is considered wrong today. But under the leftist ethic, it all depends on times and circumstances, and it's morally relativistic. It depends who's in power. It depends how bad you want it. This is what you see, this kind of very unhealthy relationship with the left, which is between this advocacy of chaos with coupled with a police state that they can deploy at their own wishes. So, for example, if you go to church, they will send the Praetorian Guard after you.
Right.
If you burn down the church at night, they will call you a righteous protester.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
The president's concern seems to be that tearing down statues leads to a slippery slope.
This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week? And is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Okay, well, I'll tell you where it stops. Somewhere. Anytime someone asks, where does it stop, the answer is always somewhere. You might let your kid have Twizzlers, but not inject black tar heroin. You don't just go, well, after the Twizzlers, where does it stop?
Of course, now we know Trump was right. John Oliver would be forced to admit today, if he had a shred of integrity, maybe he does, Trump was right, and I was wrong. Back in 2017, when President Trump was concerned about George Washington coming down, I mocked him, John Oliver would say in that thick British accent. You know what he'd say now? What would he say now? Well, yeah, I'm Trump was wrong then and he's wrong now. We're watching these statues coming down all over America. They're actually talking about the changing the name of Yale in a real ironic twist.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's Hugh Hewitt on a Friday, June the 26th, in the year of the plague, 2020. Donald Trump was in Wisconsin yesterday. Up in our friend Representative Mike Gallagher's district, Wisconsin won to celebrate the award of the brand new Martin Marinette frigate contract. Here's what the president had to say, cut number 10.
For more than 75 years, the workers of this shipyard have built some 1,500 of the finest and most fearsome vessels ever to sail. You've kept our sailors safe and our Navy strong. Every single day, you prove that American workers are the best in the world, and now you're going to do things like you've never done before. Moments ago, I walked the length of the majestic Freedom-class combat ship that many of you have been pouring your hearts and souls out for over a year. Soon that ship will be commissioned into the most powerful fleet in human history. We're building up the Navy. We'll have 350 ships. It was actually down to a level which was World War I. That's a long time ago, isn't it? World War I. We're building it up very rapidly. It's the United States Navy. It'll be bigger and stronger than it ever was before. Everywhere it goes, our allies and enemies alike will know the strength and pride that symbolizes that name, USS, and there it is, Marinette. Proud of it. It's great.
Keep going. Cut number 11, the president continuing to talk about the American budget and the military and what he's doing for it.
But this past April, Marinette's fortunes turned around, and they turned around quickly. As part of my administration's colossal rebuilding of the United States military, we've totally rebuilt the military, $2.5 trillion. And some people would say, well, that's out of the budget. I said, let me tell you something. There is no budget when it comes to our military, because we don't want the wrong people running up the front lawn of the White House, right? If they were, I don't want to say, well, maybe I did a lousy job with the military, but I did a great job in the budget. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, we have an incredible, and you know what's the greatest part about it? The greatest missiles in the world, greatest rockets. You saw the other day one of the rockets go off so successfully. The greatest ships, the greatest ships. These are the greatest of their kind anywhere in the world. The fastest, the most powerful, the greatest of everything. And you know the beautiful thing about it, it's all made in the USA. It's made by you and your counterparts.
And then he continued on cut number 12.
An estimated 15,000 additional new jobs will be created through the Wisconsin supply chain. You notice that's not a supply chain going through China and going through other countries. It's called the Wisconsin. Isn't that nice? The Wisconsin supply chain. That's been bugging me for about 25 years. I think that's why I became president. You want to know the truth? What we've done with your great deal, the USMCA, and Canada no longer takes advantage of us like they did. People don't realize, oh, Canada, beautiful national anthem, right? Oh, Canada. But they were brutal on trade. And now they have to treat us fairly. USMCA, we got rid of the worst trade deal ever made in the history of mankind. Humankind. You know, they like me to say nowadays, humankind, right? Humankind. See the ladies? I think they like it the other way just as much. Humankind. But I just want to say that we have an incredible deal, and it's going to lead to a lot of very positive things.
He is working hard for the Wisconsin vote. He's working hard for the Pennsylvania and the Michigan vote as well. He went on to talk generally about the American worker. Cut number 13, the president yesterday in Wisconsin.
The workers of this shipyard and the people of this state have always prospered and persevered by holding fast to our shared American values. In this country, we honor work. We celebrate great craftsmanship. I understand craftsmanship. I understand this world so well, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it, how well I understand it and how well I appreciate it. I appreciate talent, and that's real talent, craftsmanship. And we salute the dignity and nobility of the American worker. We look out for one that you wouldn't believe. We look out for everybody. We look out for one another. We're loyal to one another, and we love our families. We want our families taken care of. We want our families to prosper. We want our community to prosper. This community was not prospering. With all that talent, they weren't prospering, and now you're all working and doing something that you love. You can't wait. I know most of you can't wait to get to work. That's the way I feel.
That is, by the way, the best way he can campaign is to simply appeal to the blue-collar boom that he built once, he's rebuilding right now. Talk about the fact, if Joe Biden's bureaucrats return, if the hard left comes in with AOC and the squad, there will be no blue-collar boom. It'll be back to the welfare state expanding at a perilously rapid rate. Cut number 14, The president talking about manufacturing returning to the United States.
Despite your extraordinary service to our country over the generations, this beloved facility, the mainstay of your community, by far, you were going to levels of poverty. They actually had levels of poverty that nobody would have believed, with all the talent, because I see that, I understand manufacturing. Remember, manufacturing was never going to come back. Well, it did come back, and it came back big. But I understand. I have an aptitude for manufacturing, and I said it's got to come back, and it will come back, and we were doing great, and we'll do now even better. We're going to have a better year next year, I think, than almost any year in our history.
And then he closed by saying, look, we could even do better if it wasn't for the Democrats. Cut number 15.
The toughest nation to deal with are the Democrats in the USA. True. The Democrats in the USA are much tougher to deal with than any of these people that we deal with. They're far more unreasonable, and actually they're a little crazy.
Sean Hannity caught up with the president after his speech up in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, Representative Gallagher. He talked about the anarchists who are destroying monuments. Cut number 23.
And with us, we've gotten very tough. You know, we have over 100 people under arrest, which nobody knows. I said, how come nobody knows that? They said, sir, we're law enforcement people. I said, they're right. They're not public relations people. But we should let people know we've arrested a lot of people. And based on the Monuments Act, which is already in existence, they get 10 years in jail. Let's see. Let's see. Now people are just learning about it. But when they hear 10 years, ever since I announced that last week, it's been very modified by comparison. I don't know if you see that, but very modified. So they want to knock out a monument or a statue, they get 10 years in prison.
That is something I believe Tom Cotton told him about, and the president's not been shy about broadcasting it. He also spoke about China yesterday. Cut number 24.
I was absolutely doing a number on China. Not that I want to, but we're taking billions and billions away. China ran away from us when they were going to take over our country. If I didn't come along, they would have taken over our country. What they did to Obama and Biden, they ripped off this country hundreds of billions of dollars a year going into China. And nobody said anything. They didn't even talk about it. It's not like we had a bad deal with China. It was worse. We had no deal. They did whatever. And I get along very well with them. I said, how did it happen? They said, nobody ever asked. Nobody said we're going to make a deal. We're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars worth of tariffs. And we're not paying for them. China's paying for them because they devalue their currency. So we've done an incredible job. We beat China badly. China had the worst year they've had in 67 years prior to the plague coming in. They had the worst year they had in 67 years because of the tariffs and all of the things that I've done. But he'll say, he got beat in the China deal. They didn't do a China deal. China ate our lunch before me, and they would have destroyed our country. China, in my opinion, would have destroyed our country economically if I didn't get elected.
The appeasers of the Obama-Biden years, they were appeasers, and they want to come back. They're even more to the left than they were then. President also was sure to note the accomplishment of his administration with Sean Hannity, cut number 26.
We've done a lot. So we took out Soleimani, number one terrorist in the world. We took out al-Baghdadi. He was also considered number one. I guess they fought for number one. I got them both. Obama should have gotten al-Baghdadi, but we took them both out. We took 100% of the caliphate. When I took it over, it was all over the place. It was a disaster. That's the ISIS caliphate.
He also did a little media criticism, which you got here. Cut number 25.
You can do something great, and it doesn't get reported. That's, in a way, just as bad, because a lot of people can figure it out. The level of dishonesty in the media is, I think they're the most dishonest people I've ever dealt with. Now, not everybody. You're an honest journalist. You're a great journalist. We have great journalists. Look at the Pulitzer Prize. The Pulitzer Prize is very embarrassed. It's lost a lot of its credibility because all these writers got Pulitzer Prizes on the Russia, and they were all wrong. But John Solomon and all of the people that you deal with, and you, by the way, Laura, Lou Dobbs, your Fox and Friends people that are great group in the morning, including the weekends, to be honest, with Pete. But you have some great people. But they got Pulitzer Prizes on Russia, and they were wrong. Now, The committee should
we were right on the.
He's right to talk about the fact that the mainstream media is wrong and hates Donald Trump. It's got Trump derangement syndrome. It just got Trump derangement syndrome. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Issue June 24th, 2020. Michael T. Flynn, petitioner on emergency petition for a writ of mandamus from the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. Order. Upon consideration of the emergency petition for a writ of mandamus, the responses thereto, and the reply, the briefs of amici curiae in support of the parties, and the argument by the counsel, it is ordered that Flynn's petition for a writ of mandamus be granted. General Flynn, welcome to America First. Are you on the line?
I sure am, Sebastian. Yeah, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate the support from you and your listeners during this almost 4 years of going through this. And I'll have a lot more to say later on, but that was a very powerful motion that the appeals court had, and rightly so. They're basically following the law, and I think it renews, in some respects, a sense of confidence in the justice system of America today. So it's really, really great news for our family and great news for American justice.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Hey, folks, it's the Eric Metaxas Show. I'm talking to Charlie Kirk. This is why you didn't go to college and why I scorn the college that I attended. They are no longer doing their job, and they're producing people like Mayor de Blasio, who's thrilled that his daughter was arrested by cops that are theoretically under him, trying to protect property and so on and so forth. So he is signaling that he is not with the cops and he's not with the people who own the businesses that are being looted. He's making it clear that he is not for them.
They don't have grounding principles, Eric. So, for example, you and I, we are yoked and grounded by the Bible. Like that, this is our framework, right? And so,
at least we hope to be, right? In other words, we're not just saying that. We really believe in this thing called truth, and we really want to do the right thing by everyone. Even if we screw up sometimes, we have a standard.
And so it is not moral relativism. So, for example, looting in 1870 would be considered wrong under the Christian ethic as it is considered wrong today. But under the leftist ethic, it all depends on times and circumstances, and it's morally relativistic. It depends who's in power. It depends how bad you want it. This is what you see, this kind of very unhealthy relationship with the left, which is between this advocacy of chaos with coupled with a police state that they can deploy at their own wishes. So, for example, if you go to church, they will send the Praetorian Guard after you.
Right.
If you burn down the church at night, they will call you a righteous protester.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is good stuff. I mean, who will go to? You guys have women on me, eh? Is the backdrop just backdrop? Yeah, I'm trying to break.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Hard to imagine actually thinking about this kind of summer without the music of summer. We're using the Spotify Top 50, and Pretty Women is one of them. Of course, listen to the bass here a little bit. Yeah, you always got to have your acts ready, America. You always got to have your acts ready. Joe Biden not so ready yesterday. In a WGAL interview in Lancaster, he argues in that he was ready and telling people what to do about the pandemic in mid-January. Cut number 19.
As early as January, the middle of January, I was saying the pandemic is coming. We should be prepared. Why don't you use the legislation, the act that's available to a Defense Production Act to make companies move and build the things they need to build, provide the protective gear.
Joe Biden's op-ed appeared on January the 27th. At the same time, he was condemning the president's decision to close the borders with China, calling him xenophobic. Joe Biden was on top of the pandemic. Don't believe that. Don't believe it for a second. It's just absolute nightmare propaganda. You know that there's a minor controversy out there. Nancy Pelosi said that the Republicans are covering up George Floyd's murder. And Dick Durbin went on Morning Joe so that he could set the record straight. Cut number 20. Cut number 20.
And what did you make Senator Durbin of Speaker Pelosi saying Republicans are trying to, quote, get away with the murder of George Floyd?
Well, she has explained what that was all about, and I'll stand by her words on this. But we shouldn't let something this historic and this meaningful be diverted by one word here, one word there. You know, each of us who does this for a living counts on being a wordsmith at the right moment. Sometimes we're better than others.
Yeah, sometimes Nancy Pelosi is losing her mind. Joe Biden in a video call with Barack Obama. They're pulling out all the stops yesterday. Cut number 16. This has got quite the embedded error in it.
I was a kid in grade school. Bull Connor had his dogs, and he sigged them on in Birmingham on those elderly black women going to church, and they're dressed in their Sunday best, and those little kids with fire hoses ripping the skin off of them. And people in states, unlike where you and I lived, did not know anyone who was African American. They didn't have black populations like my state is, the 8th largest black population. But all of a sudden, they're turning on the television set in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where very few blacks.
Can I just stop for a second? He's talking to Barack Obama saying kids who lived in states like where you and I lived didn't know any black. He's talking to the black president, the first black president. All right? Then he says, I was in grade school watching Bull Connor. He was 20 years old when Bull Connor did his criminal deeds. I mean, there's an attic in Joe Biden's head which is pretty dusty. It really is pretty dusty. Nothing like this, though. Cut number 17.
Unnecessarily, now we have over 120 million dead from COVID.
It is just remarkable. Just remarkable. Hey, Heritage Foundation has become a sponsor of the show. HughForHeritage.com. Head over to HughForHeritage.com to find out how to deal with COVID reopening of America. They have a great report out there. How to deal with socialism at the grade and the high school level. They've got a great resource out there for teachers and parents, especially those who are working at home. And then, let me tell you what I'm doing this weekend. I'm going to a backyard barbecue with a Solaire grill because my son bought one. Because I told him if you're going to buy a grill, go to besthotgrill.com. Besthotgrill.com, very best grill in America, and he did. He told me that his in-laws were up last weekend, and my son's mother-in-law is a superb cook. I mean, just a superb cook. We were out of town last weekend, so he could not partake. Her rule, handed down to her family, is if you're going to grill everything, which is a pretty good rule. That means the corn, the vegetables, any side potato dishes, the steak, the meat. Got to have meat. Some of you people put fish on a grill. I think you ought to be arrested. But some of you do. But the rule, which I had not heard before, if you're going to grill everything. The stove should not be turned on inside. They use their Best Hot Grill. It is a powerful piece of machinery. Son James told me. Powerful piece of machinery, but they are getting the better of it. And they have got it mastered. Go to besthotgrill.com. If you're spending your summer in your backyard because of the virus, spend it with a besthotgrill.com. Go look today. Go right now. And find out how to make your summer in the backyard, your summer of COVID, the best barbecue summer ever. BestHotGrill.com. Stay tuned, America.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
The president's concern seems to be that tearing down statues leads to a slippery slope.
This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week? And is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Okay, well, I'll tell you where it stops. Somewhere. Anytime someone asks, where does it stop, the answer is always somewhere. You might let your kid have Twizzlers, but not inject black tar heroin. You don't just go, well, after the Twizzlers, where does it stop?
Of course, now we know Trump was right. John Oliver would be forced to admit today, if he had a shred of integrity, maybe he does, Trump was right, and I was wrong. Back in 2017, when President Trump was concerned about George Washington coming down, I mocked him, John Oliver would say in that thick British accent. You know what he'd say now? What would he say now? Well, yeah, I'm Trump was wrong then and he's wrong now. We're watching these statues coming down all over America. They're actually talking about the changing the name of Yale. In a real ironic twist, it turns out that Yale wasn't such a good guy when it comes to the issue of slavery in 2020 terms, because that's what we do. We apply what we know now, the hideousness, the stench of slavery, of owning human beings like cattle, and we say in 2020, well, of course, we're repulsed that this was perhaps America's past that was so egregious.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
So you signed up with the dating service Bumble.
Okay, well, last Monday, I tried to log into my application.
Right.
And I got this landing page that is entitled Black Lives Matter. And the first sentence of it, and I'm reading from it right now, it says, Bumble stands in solidarity with Black Americans, which I have no problem with. But then it says, and the global Black Lives Matter movement in the fight to end systemic racism everywhere. Then it goes on to what they've done and everything. And the last sentence is, by using Bumble, you're expected to adhere to our values as well as our guidelines. And at the bottom of the page, there is just one thing that you can do. It's a button that says, I agree. Now, I don't agree with that, but I can't get into my paid subscription unless I say I agree. Now, I think that's very unfair.
Well, this is the first time in American history that private companies have been so censorious, have undermined freedom more than the government. There's more to fear from Bumble and Google and Twitter and Starbucks and Macy's. I mean, it doesn't matter than from the government. So this is terrible. If you wrote them a note, said,
I have.
Well, tell me if you get a response, okay?
I will. I'll call back in.
Yeah, or write me or send me an email. Wow.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Chris is in San Diego. He's back. Chris, you have a better reception now, I assume.
I'm calling actually from San Bernardino, California. My girlfriend and I, Sandra, and we love your show. We love what you stand for. We find that you are such an intelligent human being and a profound individual. And I would definitely love to run a campaign out in San Bernardino, California in 2024 because I love my current president, Mr. Donald J. Trump, and I would love to run it on the slogan, Larry Elder 2024, GAS, standing for Getting America Saged. And you should definitely have Candace Owens as your running mate. We love you, Larry. You are amazing, and I feel that many people would vote for you. Many.
Well, Chris, thank you so much, and thanks, Sandra, for me. As to my running mate, Candace Owens, if you look at the Constitution, it doesn't have any age limit for vice president. It does have an age limit for president. I'm not quite sure I'd want that as a slogan, the gas movement. Can you imagine the kinds of things that people would say about that? Here comes
Welcome back, America. Joined by United States Senator Rick Scott on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Good morning, Senator. Welcome back. Always good to talk to you.
Good morning, Hugh.
Senator, I'm looking at the economic news, and even in the Nike numbers, there is buried an interesting clue. They're down 38% year over year in the quarter, but their online sales were up 75%. I'm looking at an Amazon story. I always disclose I own Amazon. Their Q2 revenue is likely to surge to $80 billion. You're a businessman before you were a very successful governor, before you were a senator. I think what we see is the forced march of American commerce online with amazing productivity benefits to be harvested. I might be hunting for a silver lining, but I also think it's the reality of what's going on in the economy. What do you as a businessman think?
Well, first off, I didn't buy that much online before the coronavirus. I know enough now that I actually know my credit card number. So I think people are buying a lot more online. The world's changing. And, if as a business person, you'd say, well, I don't like all the chaos, but that's when the opportunities are there. So as a business guy, I'd say, boy, what should I be doing to win in the new environment? If the new environment, we're going to have more online. There's going to be different products that people want, different services that people want. I mean, I'm fascinated with what my daughters buy versus what my wife and I buy. It's different. It's different. So it's going to be an interesting time. I'm excited. The economy is clearly reopening. We've got a lot of work to do, but we're going to get there.
Do you believe that the Democrats are invested in economic despair? Because it seems to me they are ignoring every positive sign and emphasizing every negative one.
All they care about is elections. All they care about is power. They don't care about solving problems. Look at Tim Scott's law enforcement bill. I mean, they didn't want to even have a conversation about it because, oh gosh, we might pass a bill and then the Republicans might get some credit for it. Donald Trump might actually sign something. That wouldn't be good for the Democrats, for Joe Biden. All this is they're all talk and no action. They're not out there to help people. They're not out there to help people get a job. They might be out there to help people become dependent, which doesn't help you long term, but not help you get a job.
Now, Senator Scott, recent polls show the president down between 7 and 10 points in Florida. Now, I don't believe those polls. I believe he will win Florida handily. But Florida, having won 3 statewide races there in the last 9 years. What do you think the president's reelection chances are in Florida?
Oh, he's going to win. First off, you go back to look at the polls of my races. None of the polls ever said I was going to win. All the polls were generally off 4 to 7 points. This is a 50-50 state, but here's why Donald Trump is going to win. Does he care about law enforcement? Yes. Do the Democrats? No, they don't care about law enforcement. Does he care about the economy? Yes. The Democrats? No. What have they done? They believe in socialism. And think about it. There's some issues down here that are going to help Trump. Cuba, Venezuela. Look at what Joe Biden. He was part of appeasing the Castro regime, and he met and meeting with people like Maduro. So So those things are going to help him here. So I think Trump will have a big win here. Look, we have an election. We're going to have to fight to win. I'm fighting for the future of this country. I know that we need to have Trump win. We need to have a Republican Senate, so we don't get all these crazy things that the Democrats want to do that will be bad for our families long term.
Senator Scott, let me play for you Joe Biden yesterday talking about the virus. This is cut number 17 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Joe Biden.
Unnecessarily, now we have over 120 million dead from COVID.
Now, the president spoke about this latest gaffe with Fox's Sean Hannity last night, cut number 22.
I love people.
Yeah.
But my most important job is to run this country great. I built it once so great. Turn it off, now we're doing it again. And it's happening.
And you're ready to roll.
It's going to be better than ever. But here's the thing. I've got to do that, folks. This is serious business. We can't have somebody. That's a mistake. That's not a mistake. That's a serious error. When he says he's running for the U.S. Senate, that's a serious error. When he says, I'm going to beat Joe Biden, which got very little coverage, that's not like an error, gee, it's a slip-up. That's a serious error. So when you just told me that, I hadn't heard that just happened, I guess.
Yes, it did.
That's a serious error. That's not a permissible type of error, because there's something going on. And we can't take that. It's wonderful to say, gee, I feel sorry, or it's too bad, because I do. Except we're talking about the presidency of the United States, and it's just not acceptable.
Senator Rick Scott, straight up, hard to answer question, but it's got to be asked. Do you believe Joe Biden is experiencing cognitive decline?
I don't know Joe Biden, but what I do know is he's wrong on all the issues. He's going to appease China. He's going to appease Cuba. He's not going to defend capitalism. So I don't know him well enough to talk about his abilities. But I can tell you, on the issues, he's completely wrong. He will not do anything to help this country move where we need to do. We have got to fight. Our adversary is China now. The General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, Xi, has decided we're his enemy, and he's going to try to beat us. Joe Biden.
I'm going to come back to that, but I'm asking Republicans to straight up focus on what people are talking about. There is buzz every day. The president said yesterday, this is not normal. Are you alarmed by this issue, Senator Scott?
Well, I've run 3 races. You've got to always be careful what you say, and don't say things that don't make any sense. Saying 120 million people died of coronavirus, that doesn't make any sense. We know that's not true. It's one thing if you're going to run for office, you have got to be on your game every day. But on top of that, you got to be right on the issues. Joe Biden's wrong on the issues. I think Trump's going to win because he's right on the issues. I don't know about Joe Biden, his abilities, but I can tell you what, he's always wrong. Do
you think he has to engage the press? He has avoided a press for close to 3 months now, which I think is astonishing.
He's not going to engage the press. This is what happened in my race in 2018 with Bill Nelson. When Bill Nelson, he would do a gaffe every time he did an interview. He'd say something that was wrong. That wasn't even accurate, so he just stayed home. And the press gave him a pass. That's what they're going to do with Biden. They're going to give him a pass. They're not going to talk about how he's wrong on China, how he's wrong on capitalism, how he's wrong on law enforcement, how he's wrong on Cuba. They're not going to do that stuff.
That is a very interesting comparison, Senator. How much did you beat Bill Nelson by?
By less than 1%. It's a tough state.
But the stay-at-home campaign worked in essence for Bill Nelson because the media was with him.
The media's all in.
Do you think the media is all in with Joe Biden?
Oh, absolutely. If I stayed home and didn't go out, look at the difference. Trump is out doing interviews all the time. Did Barack Obama? No. Look at the standard. It's so different if you're a Republican in this country with regard to most of the media. Look, the standard's different. From my standpoint, that's fine. I'll go do it. I'll explain it, why I do what I do. I think that's what Trump's doing. But I really believe in the end, the election is going to be about the issues that matter to a family. What's better for your family?
Will you support
stand up to China?
That is, by the way, it will come down to the economy. I tell people, tell me in September how the economy is looking. I'll tell you who will win. But I do worry about, in the meantime, I do not think Silicon Valley is Donald Trump's friend, although Mark Zuckerberg is at least not an enemy. And for that, he's being pilloried by people in his own company. Do you believe these large social media platforms ought to have the protections of Section 230, so that they ought to be treated as bulletin boards as opposed to publishers? Because I no longer do.
They're going to lose their immunity if they don't change. If they do exactly what they're doing, where they go after conservative sites. But Twitter was in one day. I said, so you kicked. I guess that was when they kicked Mitch McConnell off. But Maduro, you're okay with Maduro down in Venezuela that's doing genocide against his people. You never kick any stop any of his stuff. So if they continue to pick and choose, they're going to lose their immunity. It's just a matter of time.
Now, there is a story this morning that one of the best guys in the Senate on the other side, Chris Coons, is talking about doing away with the legislative filibuster. I personally do not believe that they will hesitate for a minute if they win the Senate, which is why we've got to reelect Cory Gardner and Tom Tillis and Martha McSally and David Perdue and Joni Ernst, and there are a couple others who they're targeting. But do you think they will do away with the legislative filibuster, Senator Scott, and what do you think will be the consequences of that?
Chris Coons led the effort to keep it when Trump got elected, right? And now he's leading the effort to get rid of it if Biden gets elected. I mean, how disingenuous that somebody would do that. Take this position if this person's the president, this position, this person president. However, I've been there 18 months. It's really consistent. The Democrats do it every day. So yeah, do I believe they'll get rid of it? Yeah, they'll do that. They'll try to stack the Supreme Court. You know, they'll do everything they can to make sure they have power forever. That's all they care. They don't care about you. They don't care about making your life better. They care about their power. That's what they care about every day. The Democrats, all they care about is power.
I want to pause one more question, Senator. You just said they'll stack the Supreme Court. You don't really believe, do you, that they will move to expand the number of seats on the Supreme Court?
They will do everything that they think they can get away with. If you think about this, think about what you just said about Chris Coons, a guy that led the effort to make sure we didn't get rid of the filibuster when Trump got elected, but is now going to lead the effort to get rid of the filibuster if Biden gets elected. So what else will they do? They're going to do everything they can to take the power. That's exactly what they'll do.
On that ominous note, I wish you a good weekend, Senator Rick Scott. That'll make some news, and I appreciate it always when you make news on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Thank you, Senator. Let me remind all of you out there as well that the show is paid for by sponsors. I always like to give my sponsors freebies when I can. AndrewandTodd.com if you're buying a vacation home, if you're buying a second house, if you're buying a rental property, if you've decided the market's gone so high that you just can't afford to have it go bust on you. I don't believe that, by the way. I still got all my money in the market, mutual funds and Amazon, because I think the market is changing rapidly, and the mutual fund I invest in is a forward-looking mutual fund. And I believe as well that the economy is going to grow. If Joe Biden gets close to the presidency, we'll see a dip, but I don't think that's going to happen. So go to AndrewandTodd.com if you want to buy property. The 10-year interest rate dropped down to 0.68%. So it remains the lowest interest rates in history, the lowest interest rates in history. Then they do loans over 50 states. AndrewandTodd.com. Let me also remind you, ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. $19.95 gets you started. I took it in the first hour. I tell you about an hour 2 and 3 so that you do not leave home without it. You don't go anywhere without it. And honorboundcoffee.com, because every cup of coffee you have in the morning, afternoon, or evening, I don't know who drinks coffee at night, but some of you people are strange and you do that. Make sure it's Honor Bound Coffee. 4 different grinds, 4 different blends, 16 different choices. You order it once, it keeps coming as long as you want it to. You'll love that coffee, and every dollar of profit will go to support the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and the Coast Guardmen out there serving under the flag of the United States. So please join Honor Bound Coffee. Finally, let me tell you about The Wild Adventure. My friend Jan Janura's ministry to men. Actually, it's ministry to younger men now, too. They've got the Young Guns program. A week of fishing and fellowship and fine food and conversation about important subjects in Montana in the shadow of the Madison Mountains. And they've had 4 or 5 people drop out because of COVID-related inability to travel. And they understand that. They're going forward. They got a lot because, hey, there's not much COVID in Montana. So you people who are listening in Denver, you people who are listening in Seattle, drive over. Go to twa.us, The Wild Adventure, twa.us. Find out which weeks have vacancies. They're normally sold out this time of the year. People are bummed because they decided, I got a week I can go fishing in Montana. They call up Jan Gennaro, who runs the thing, and they say, Jan, can I come? And he says, sorry, it's 12 guys at a time. I've been 3 times. Dwayne's been there, but you've got to go check the dates, twa.us. They've got 4 or 5 vacancies in the young guns because they were coming the farthest, and they've got 2 or 3 in the older guys, over 40. twa.us to find out the weeks for which there are vacancies. If you heard the testimonials, go watch the testimonials. You'll say that's the best week they've had since they got married. twa.us, and come right back here to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
So the Attorney General of Massachusetts, she says sometimes you have to burn down everything before you can rebuild it. She's talking to the Chamber of Commerce when she says this. You have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who on her Instagram feed had a 101 guide of how not to get caught by the police.
Wait, before you go to AOC, let's go back to this is the AG in Massachusetts.
I'm paraphrasing. Actually, I have the quote here. I can read from it directly.
I heard it, and it was very clear that she was praising the arson.
It says, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yes, America is burning, but that's how forests grow. This is Maura Healey, the Massachusetts Attorney General, speaking to the Chamber of Commerce.
I just want to pause on that. The idea that the Attorney General of Massachusetts, faced with arson of people's property, people's businesses. We're not talking about forest fires. We are talking about human beings who have built businesses.
Let's go a level deeper, though, Eric. The left does not believe in private property. And this is something I've been talking about for years. And I've been challenged by the intelligentsia of the radical left by saying, no, we believe in private property. We actually look at their fundamental writings. They don't believe that individuals should be able to own property. And this is fundamental to Western society. And so a lot of these radicals have been indoctrinated in our universities to believe that somehow you can make something good out of burning down our entire civilization.
Right.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lanhee Chen.
ADF, fighting for those whose liberties are being violated.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, foot in key locations right out of significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region.
Incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka
for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by David Cortman, my friend from Alliance Defending Freedom. Alliance Defending Freedom is your representative preserving your religious liberty. You can support them online at yourfreedomfund.org, yourfreedomfund.org, or call 866-700-1060. They're one of my oldest and most valued sponsors on the show, and I'd love for you to make a tax-deductible donation at yourfreedomfund.org. 866-700-1060. And now's a good time to show support and to pray, because next week is a big week at the Supreme Court, David Cortman. What's on tap, which must come down next week?
Yeah, we've got several cases coming down. One of them is about, we've heard a lot about school choice across the country, and certain states have enacted these tax credits where you could donate to a not-for-profit, and that goes to kids in public schools and private schools that are both secular and religious. And interestingly, in Montana, because they included religious schools along with all other schools, the Montana Supreme Court struck that down, and the Supreme Court should be coming out with their opinion pretty soon, and that's a pretty important case.
David, let me talk to you about that. That's a Little Blaine amendment, and I talked to the smart guys about that yesterday. I believe they've been unconstitutional since the moment they were added to the state constitutions. Can we hope that 5 members of the court strike down not just Montana's Blaine amendment, but by extension and precedent, every Blaine amendment in the states?
I mean, we certainly hope so. One concern is the chief is pretty cautious about doing things like that. But if you remember, ADF had a case, pretty recently called Trinity Lutheran that was based on a similar matter where they excluded a church-owned preschool from participating in the recycling program. And the court there basically said it violates the federal constitution, the free exercise clause, to exclude religious organizations. This is a similar type of case, so we're hoping based on that precedent, the court will go that far this time, but we'll see.
We also expect Our Lady of Guadalupe to come down next week, as well as Little Sisters of the Poor, 2 more religious liberty cases. How are you feeling about both of those, David Cortman?
Yeah, I mean, Our Lady of Guadalupe is a good case because it talks about religious organizations and what freedom they have to decide who they employ. And of course, if you're working for a church or a religious school, you got to be able to believe the doctrine. You got to be able to act it out. You can't be saying one thing and doing another in front of the kids. So that's an extremely important case because that's going to deal with what authority religious organizations have over their own people. So that's a big case too.
What about Little Sisters of the Poor?
Yeah, Little Sisters of the Poor is another one. We've heard about Obamacare for years and the ACA, and that has to do with when you're talking about whether an employer has to fund contraception or abortifacients. Do people who have religious or moral conviction against them, do they get from it? And so that's been going on for years. Congress, did a good job in the administration in exempting this time a broader class of people. And, of course, certain states and folks on the left said, no, you can't allow these religious and moral groups to be exempt from this. And so I think that's going to be a good case. We're hoping that comes out the right way and exempts
that's 3 out of the big 4. And then I've left for last June Medical, which is the Louisiana law limiting abortion in Louisiana to doctors who have admitting privileges at a hospital within 40 miles of a clinic. David, I think that's going to win. I've read the chief's concurrence in Citizens United, which I consider to be the most important concurrence in the last 25 years, and I do not believe he will be bound by the Texas case of a year earlier upon his concurrence in Citizens United. But I do not know if the record before the court even allows them to reach the KC precedent and behind it the Roe architecture. Roe is really defunct, but people say Roe. Is that issue before the court? Could they reach it if they want to?
I think they certainly could reach it. They always can if it applies, but I'm kind of leaning with you. I don't think they're going to go that far, but I think it's going to be important that they distinguish the Texas case that you talked about, because I know the record fairly well. It's completely different. There are justifications here, and we do want to have physicians have admitting privileges in local hospitals to protect the women, and that's really what this law is about. So
might they not overrule the Texas case, David Cortman?
I mean, I would be surprised if they did. But we'd be happy with them pushing it aside and saying, look, that's a completely different case.
Was the chief in the dissent on the Texas case?
I believe that he was.
Yes.
But I think the chief, has a caution for overruling cases, especially recent ones. So we'll see.
Do you have Citizens United concurrence on hand close, David?
I do not.
Okay, I've been reading it a lot. And he says, when the court is wrong, and it's been wrong, and the country's not coming with it, better to get rid of a bad case than to stick with the one. And he adds that stare decisis is least important when it is most recent. The Texas case is, 2 years old?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. I just, in seeing some of the opinions and the recent Bostock and Harris opinion, I just don't know. And so, I mean, that's something to hope for. I do think Texas is wrong. I think there's no doubt about that. So we'll be interested in seeing where that goes.
I'm looking for a 4-0 week next week, David Cortman, and if that happens, it's because of Alliance Defending Freedom. I want everyone who's listening to go to yourfreedomfund.org. That's easy to remember, right? Even you Steelers fans, Y-O-U-R, freedomfund.org, or call 866-700-1060. You can play a significant part in protecting not only your freedom, but the freedom of your children and your grandchildren if you go to yourfreedomfund.org, or you call 866-700-1060. All donations are tax deductible. Hour number 3 of the Hillsdale Dialogue is straight ahead, America. Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
The president tweeted out about the removal of the Teddy Roosevelt statue that has greeted visitors to the American Museum of Natural History in New York City since 1940. Almost 100 years. This big statue, known as the equestrian statue. He's on a horse, and he's flanked by a black man and a Native American. The equestrian statue is going to be removed outside the front of the Museum of Natural History because the museum president said there has been a lot of controversy over Teddy Roosevelt and this statue and colonialism. And the mayor of New York is cheering the removal of this statue by saying the statue explicitly depicts black and indigenous people as subjugated and racially inferior. De Blasio said the city supports the museum's request. It's the right decision and the right time to remove this problematic statue. The president tweeted about it moments ago, saying, ridiculous, don't do it. He retweeted an article from the Washington Times citing the controversy of the statue of Teddy Roosevelt on a horse, flanked by a black man and a Native American. Just 4 words, ridiculous, don't do it, the commander-in-chief tweeted.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Attention business owners. As America gets back to work, will customers know you're there? With little warning, the coronavirus attacked our nation and our well-being in ways we never anticipated. The tragic loss of life, unprecedented economic upheaval, and a shattered sense of security has left many individuals and businesses in shambles. While the aftershocks could be felt for months to come, they may not have to. There is hope for an extraordinary turnaround of your bottom line. But will you be prepared for America's grand reopening? All signs point to the biggest business opportunity of our lifetime, coming as early as this summer. A recent survey of local advertisers shows a 10-point jump in the number of local advertisers who plan to maintain or increase their spending. 1 in 4 businesses expect to spend more in advertising by the end of June, and more than half expect to restart or surge their spending by this summer. As the numbers forecast increased spending from advertisers across the country, will your message be seen and heard? Will your business benefit from the pent-up consumer demand? Salem Surround is prepared to help you deliver the right advertising message to reach all potential customers wherever they are. Your business can be ready for a post-COVID-19 economy, but the time to act is now. Be at the front of the line as our economy begins to fire on all cylinders once again. For a free assessment of your marketing message and strategy, visit salemsurround.com or contact your local media strategist today.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Are the polls accurate that Biden is quite ahead? What is your read?
If the election were held tomorrow, Biden would win. The polls are not accurate. They're push polls, which means that the polling companies want a certain outcome because they're paid by corporations that want that outcome. And so they do little things like poll more Democrats than Republicans, and then they say, well, there's more registered Democrats than Republicans in the country. Well, that's true, but that doesn't mean there's going to be a turnout that has an 8-point spread like you do. And then they have the independents. What independents? They never say. So if you're going to call San Francisco and somebody's going to be an independent, which the polling companies quite often do, you're going to get a liberal take on your poll, and that's called push polling. Anyway, Biden would win tomorrow, but he's a weak candidate, and Trump can exploit him in the debates. If COVID diminishes, and it's a stubborn disease, that will ignite the economy, which is really what Donald Trump is all about. So all the other stuff is secondary to COVID diminishing and the economy surging again, because the radical Black Lives Matter movement situation works against Biden. As I said, most people don't want this radical left approach, and you saw Trump exploit that in Tulsa on Saturday. If things go well for the country, Trump wins. If they continue to be chaotic, he probably loses.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lanhee Chen.
ADF, fighting for those whose liberties are being violated.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. That music means it's time for the Hillsdale Dialogue, the last radio hour of the week. And if you're watching on my YouTube channel, you'll see I'm joined by Dean Matt Spalding. He, of course, is the head of Hillsdale in Washington, their graduate school that sits in the shadow of the Capitol. Good morning, Matt Spalding. How are you, Dean?
Good morning, Hugh. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm great. We're going to cover some very... it is good to see you. We're going to cover some very controversial points. We're going to cover the names of military bases, the names of aircraft carriers and statues, and whether they ought to come up or down. I'd like to start, and we're going to cover Senator Tom Cotton's speech on the floor of the Senate this week. I'd like to start with the statue that is closest to Hillsdale's campus in D.C. It's called the Great Emancipator statue, I believe. Can you describe it to us, and why ought it to remain?
Yeah, I can. It's called Emancipation. It was erected. It was commissioned and made in 1876 by a guy named Thomas Ball, and it was put up with money given. It was given to the government by former slaves, and Frederick Douglass is the one who spoke at its dedication. Here's, I don't know if you can you see this? Here's a picture of it. This is.
I can see that. It shows Lincoln and a former slave appearing to bow before him. I'm not sure I would say bow. I would say in a position of oppression.
Here's part of the controversy, and we know something of the answer here because the creator, the sculptor, Barr, actually wrote some things. And he wrote the slave is not kneeling. He's actually in a crouched position, getting ready to stand up. He's broken his chain. And if you see, he's not looking at Lincoln. He's looking off into the distance. He's getting ready to rise up to freedom. Lincoln, on the other hand, is saying, go forward. You're free. And it's symbolic, I think, exactly of the message of both Lincoln and the freedom of slaves and emancipation. And I think it's been not only wrongly, it's misunderstood, but the idea of tearing this down as being a statue representing a systemic racism in America, I think, is just patently absurd.
You also noted for me in your notes, Matt Spalding, that Frederick Douglass dedicated the statue?
He did dedicate the statue, and it was probably one of his greatest speeches. You can look it up online and read it for yourself. And we see in there that he is very straightforward. He's speaking to President Grant, who's sitting in front of him at the time. And among other things, there's a criticism about the status of Reconstruction. Reconstruction is not doing that well, and he's pushing against that. But he praises Lincoln, and he praises Lincoln very extensively. And if I can, I would actually quote one quick passage where he says that when it came to slavery, Lincoln was seemed to be tardy, cold, dull, and indifferent, but measured from the sentiment of his country, a sentiment he was bound as a statesman to consult. He was swift, zealous, radical, and determined. And this is a monument to that man who freed these millions of slaves, and our first martyred president. Is a powerful, powerful address. That it's hard to understand why there would be any criticism about it, especially in light of, we have today, as we're going to talk about later, the sense of mob rule. Where there's a fever, people being led by their passions. We need less of that. We need more Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. This man was a slave. You read his autobiography. He was a slave. And yet, through all of that, through that suffering, he could see what America was, and he looked through that. And at first, he was against. He thought the founding was bad and racist, and it was full of slavery. But he then studied it and read it, and looked around him, and he concluded that the Constitution was a great freedom document. He called it, and it was a freedom document because behind the Constitution was another thing called the Declaration of Independence, which he called the ring bolt. of our country. The ring bolt, we have to go back to those truths of the Declaration.
And the line I have been drawing for people, Dean Spalding, is the Jefferson Memorial and the Washington Monument do not have to come down, even though both men owned slaves, which is a moral failing. They set us on a path that allowed for liberty. And that path was not a necessary thing that was going to evolve by history. They set slavery on a path to extinction. Lincoln recognized that it could not survive outside of the South. Douglas attempted to obstruct it. Lincoln was the first to try and obstruct the obstruction, and eventually he brought about the Civil, as he said, and the Civil War came. This past week, 2 statues were toppled in San Francisco. One is a Catholic I object to, Father Saint Junipero Serra, who did great things for the native peoples of California, which some dispute. But he was a great saint of the Catholic Church. He was pulled down in an act of anti-Catholic bigotry. And I believe Catholics believe that genuinely. And U.S. Grant, who not only won the war that freed the slaves and defeated the Confederacy, he also took on the Ku Klux Klan, and he made Reconstruction stick. There is no rhyme or reason to tearing down a U.S. Grant statue.
No, look, this goes back to the point about there's no reason, there's no deliberation, there's no consideration of what's going on. I read something the other day about a statue of an immigrant abolitionist who joined and fought with the Union armies that was torn down.
In Wisconsin, Mr. Hegg, yes.
There's no principle informing what is going on here. This is why I think Tom Cotton's speech on mob rule, which points us back to Lincoln's great Lyceum speech, which is about mob rule in the face of the anti-slavery movement and the pro-slavery fights, is apropos of the moment.
Let's do the first 2 cuts.
There's no principle distinguishing between something that I think needs to go, and we can talk about that. I mean, these bases and these things about the Confederacy, which is a particular thing, which attempting to overthrow the United States, and founders and other great men. Grant was a great man, but also some flawed figures in history that, despite their flaws, as Douglas recognizes in that speech about Lincoln, he says, was not perfect. He says he was a white man and he was upholding his country. But he was a great man, and he was a great man because despite those flaws, despite those human imperfections, he saw through that. He had the ability to see through that to the principle behind that, which should inform us as human beings about about a human equality. And that's what Frederick Douglass saw. If anybody could complain about this country, if anybody could talk about the deep slavery behind and kind of interwoven in our history, it was Frederick Douglass. But Frederick Douglass did not think racism and slavery was systemic. This is an important distinction. It existed. It was a necessary evil. It was a compromise to the founding, but it was a compromise for the sake of getting into this regime, the systemic principle of the regime, which is that all men are created equal.
Let's go to the Senate. Senator Tom Cotton's Senate floor speech from Monday, cut number 1.
I hope I am overwary, but if I am not, there is, even now, something of ill omen amongst us. I mean the increasing disregard for law which pervades the country, the growing disposition to substitute the wild and furious passions in lieu of the sober judgment of courts, and the worse than savage mobs for the executive ministers of justice. This disposition is awfully fearful in any community, and that it exists now in ours, though grating to our feelings to admit, it would be a violation of truth and an insult to our intelligence to deny. Accounts of outrages committed by mobs form the everyday news of the times. Now, those are not my words. Those are the words of a young Abraham Lincoln. But sadly, they ring with truth today.
We're going to come back to that. The Lyceum address, which he quoted, Matt Spalding, 30 seconds, very significant in Lincoln's career.
This is Lincoln's first great speech. If there are 2 speeches you read the Lyceum speech and the Temperance speech. Here's the key. He gave it in 1838. Hugh, you're going to hate this, but he was 29 years old. This shows
that
Lincoln's
is bad.
greatness, but
did he give it in Ohio? I know, you know, if it'd be better if he gave it in Ohio, Matt. I'll be right back with Dean Metz.
It's a wonderful speech.
Dean Metz Spalding is my guest. All things Hillsdale are found at hillsdale.edu. All of our conversations are at hughforhillsdale.com. More of Senator Cotton's speech, more conversation with Matt Spalding. Straight ahead. Stay tuned.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hughiverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hughiverse.com.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Are the polls accurate that Biden is quite ahead? What is your read?
If the election were held tomorrow, Biden would win. The polls are not accurate. They're push polls, which means that the polling companies want a certain outcome because they're paid by corporations that want that outcome. And so they do little things like poll more Democrats than Republicans, and then they say, well, there's more registered Democrats than Republicans in the country. Well, that's true, but that doesn't mean there's going to be a turnout that has an 8-point spread like you do. And then they have the independents. What independents? They never say. So if you're going to call San Francisco and somebody's going to be an independent, which the polling companies quite often do, you're going to get a liberal take on your poll, and that's called push polling. Anyway, Biden would win tomorrow, but he's a weak candidate, and Trump can exploit him in the debates. If COVID diminishes, and it's a stubborn disease, that will ignite the economy, which is really what Donald Trump is all about. So all the other stuff is secondary to COVID diminishing and the economy surging again, because the radical Black Lives Matter movement situation works against Biden. As I said, most people don't want this radical left approach, and you saw Trump exploit that in Tulsa on Saturday. If things go well for the country, Trump wins. If they continue to be chaotic, he probably loses.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
In that state, there are 2 male athletes
who identify as female, who have taken 15 state track and field championship records over the last 3 years, and all of the opportunities that come with those. So there's definitely an issue before the courts on women's sports and the fairness for women to be able to compete and to be able to enjoy the equal opportunities, and particularly the scholarship opportunities that come from that. So this decision did not reach that, and the majority opinion actually said it doesn't reach women's athletics, but we have every expectation that activists will try to use the logic to move it into that context, and we will be there to try to protect women's equal opportunities.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by Dean Matt Spalding. He is the leader of the Washington, D.C. campus of the Hillsdale .edu. The graduate program of Hillsdale College is located on Statesmanship on Capitol Hill. Dean Matt Spalding leads at all things Hillsdale are found at hillsdale.edu. We're talking about a speech that Senator Tom Cotton gave this week on Monday, referencing a speech given almost 180 years ago by Lincoln himself, Abraham Lincoln, in 1838 in Springfield, Illinois, to which he had recently removed. He was 28 years old. The speech was prompted by the killing of a black man in St. Louis. He was burned to death by a mob. And so Abraham Lincoln chose to speak that night in Springfield on the perpetuation of our political institutions, specifically against mob violence of the sort that killed that black man in 1838. Here is Senator Cotton on the floor talking about the mobs of today, cut number 2.
In recent weeks, violent mobs have roamed our streets, defacing and tearing down statues and monuments, in most cases with neither resistance from the police nor legal consequences. On Friday, a mob tore down another statue just a few blocks from here. The police stood idly by and watched as rioters toppled it and set it on fire. One can only assume they were ordered not to intervene by Washington's left-wing mayor. But here's the thing. Steps were already underway to move that statue lawfully. Washington's delegate in Congress had legislation to that effect. But mobs don't care to negotiate, only to destroy. The delegate said, "I have no doubt I could have gotten that bill through, but the people got here before due process."
Cotton went on to say this about mob violence, and I'll go to Matt Spalding, cut number 3.
Most simply, Lincoln knew that mobs inevitably make mistakes and commit injustices. Some may celebrate the destruction of disfavored statues and monuments. But what of the vandals in Boston who defaced a monument to the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, the first African-American regiment to fight for the Union, whose bravery and skill was immortalized in the movie Glory? What of the outlaws in Philadelphia who defaced a statue of Matthias Baldwin, a devout, passionate abolitionist? Mobs don't discriminate between legitimate and illegitimate targets of their destructions. That's because they are mobs. Lincoln also warned that the lawless in spirit will become lawless in practice because of mob violence, seeing no consequences for crimes.
You know, Matt Spalding, this is the kind of speech the Senate is made to hear.
Look, this is in the midst of all this. I've been teaching a course on the pre-Civil War era, building up to Lincoln, and studying Frederick Douglass and Stephen Douglas. All this, I'm looking for and hoping to find thinkers today who are assessing the situation, and it was just wonderful to hear Senator Cotton's speech. He has tapped into, I think, the core problem, which we've all missed, including, and this is on the left and the right, which is there's a fundamental difference here, and we need to make some distinctions and go back to a principled way of thinking about these questions. The point about mob rule, which Senator Cotton says, which goes back to Lincoln's speech intentionally, is to make clear a distinction between peaceful protest, which we have a fundamental right to do, and he praises and Lincoln praises. That's how democracy works. But that's a difference between that and something that goes to the next step, which is to violate the law. And the thing behind that violation of the law, which Cotton is pointing to, which Lincoln emphasizes, is the passions. Self-government, free government, constitutional government requires that we, despite the issue of the day, whether it's tearing down statues or fighting against some cause, we need to check our passions and keep them focused and learn to orient them towards a more deliberative and rational way of proceeding and defending those things we love and defending the truth. And the way you do that is through something called the rule of law. And that's not good for the right to the left or it's good for everybody. That's how we actually that's the crown jewel of what America did and what it accomplished. And you only can have the rule of law if it's based on
it is necessary but not sufficient. We'll talk more about it after the break on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Here's what Bill Barr had to say about voter fraud, censorship, mail-in ballots, all of it. The Attorney General is clearly concerned about all of it.
Yes, I am worried about censorship. I'm worried about a number of things going into the election. One, the censorship of robust debate. I'm also worried about undermining the public confidence in the integrity of the elections. The thing we have going for us, especially when there's intense division in the country, is that we have peaceful transfers of power, and our way of resolving it is to have an election. But when governments, state governments, start adopting these practices like mail-in ballots that open the floodgates of potential fraud, then people's confidence in the outcome of the election is going to be undermined.
Here's cut number 10. Listen to Bill Barr and what he said about this election fraud issue that he's deeply concerned about.
Well, there's a big discussion right now about mail-in voting. Hillary Clinton said it's fine, it's fair.
Well, it absolutely opens the floodgates to fraud. Those things are delivered into mailboxes. They can be taken out. There's questions about whether or not it even denies a secret ballot, because a lot of the states have you signing the outside of the envelope. So the person who opens the envelope will know how people voted. There's no, right now, a foreign country could print up tens of thousands of counterfeit ballots and be very hard for us to detect which was the right and which was the wrong ballot. So I think it can upset and undercut the confidence in the integrity of our elections.
And yet, if there is a groundswell of voters, that makes it much harder for them to pull the wool over America's eyes.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Issue June 24th, 2020. Michael T. Flynn, petitioner on emergency petition for a writ of mandamus from the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. Order. Upon consideration of the emergency petition for a writ of mandamus, the responses thereto, and the reply, the briefs of amici curiae in support of the parties, and the argument by the counsel, it is ordered that Flynn's petition for a writ of mandamus be granted. General Flynn, welcome to America First. Are you on the line?
I sure am, Sebastian. Yeah, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate the support from you and your listeners during this almost 4 years of going through this. And I'll have a lot more to say later on, but that was a very powerful motion that the appeals court had, and rightly so. They're basically following the law, and I think it renews, in some respects, a sense of confidence in the justice system of America today. So it's really, really great news for our family and great news for American justice.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
So the Attorney General of Massachusetts, she says sometimes you have to burn down everything before you can rebuild it. She's talking to the Chamber of Commerce when she says this. You have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who on her Instagram feed had a 101 guide on how not to get caught by the police.
Wait, before you go to AOC, let's go back to this is the AG in Massachusetts.
I'm paraphrasing. Actually, I have the quote here. I can read from it directly.
I heard it, and it was very clear that she was praising the arson.
It says, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yes, America is burning, but that's how forests grow. This is Maura Healey, the Massachusetts Attorney General, speaking to the Chamber of Commerce.
I just want to pause on that. The idea that the Attorney General of Massachusetts, faced with arson of people's property, people's businesses. We're not talking about forest fires. We are talking about human beings who have built businesses.
Let's go a level deeper, though, Eric. The left does not believe in private property. And this is something I've been talking about for years. And I've been challenged by the intelligentsia of the radical left by saying, no, we believe in private property. We actually look at their fundamental writings. They don't believe that individuals should be able to own property. And this is fundamental to Western society. And so a lot of these radicals have been indoctrinated in our universities to believe that somehow you can make something good out of burning down our entire civilization.
Right.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt. It's the Hillsdale Dialogue. All things Hillsdale are collected at hillsdale.edu, including some amazing online courses which will get you through it along the quarantine goes. They've got course materials for you and your family at hillsdale.edu, and all of the Hillsdale Dialogues, which I've done either with President Larry Arnn of Hillsdale College or Dean Matt Spalding, who you see there on the screen with me. If you're watching on YouTube, he is the Dean of the Hillsdale program in D.C., their graduate program. All of those and more are collected at hughforhillsdale.com. Dean Spalding, before we go to the big questions of bases and aircraft carriers, I want to finish with some Tom Cotton scene-setting excerpts from his speech on Monday. Here he is talking, warning about what mobs do. Eventually, they come for you. Cut number 4.
The mob doesn't stop at statues. Rioters have already torched police precincts in low-income housing in Minneapolis. Churches and synagogues have been vandalized. Next, perhaps the mob will target the homes of police officers. And soon enough, the mob may come for you and your home and your family. As the mob expands its power, Lincoln cautioned that good citizens, seeing their property destroyed, their families insulted, their lives endangered, their persons injured, and seeing nothing in prospect that forebodes a change for the better, become tired of and disgusted with a government that offers them no protection. Mob rule can only serve to demoralize our people and shake their faith in our government and our way of life. As the mob rises, civilization recedes.
One more cut from Senator Cotton. Cut number 5, the ultimate victim of mob rule. Cut number 5, please.
Finally, Lincoln observed that by operation of this mobocratic spirit, which all must admit is now abroad in the land, the strongest bulwark of any government, and particularly of those constituted like ours, may effectually be broken down and destroyed. I mean the attachment of the people. The final victim of mob rule is the very spirit of civic-minded patriotism that's necessary to preserve our republic. And for all these reasons, Lincoln said, there is no grievance that is a fit object of redress by mob law. We cannot tolerate mob rule, and we cannot allow it to go unpunished. While local authorities would usually take the lead in prosecuting these crimes, unfortunately, Many of them seem unwilling to stand up to the mob and uphold the rule of law. Therefore, I call upon the Department of Justice to bring charges against these mob vigilantes, prosecuting them to the fullest extent of the law.
Now, Matt Spalding, your comments first on Senator Cotton's use of the Lyceum speech by Lincoln.
Look, the Senator Cotton here goes to the heart of the matter, which is the problem with mob law is it always the attachment of the people, as he quotes that passage from Lincoln. That's why we must uphold the law, and the part of the response is we need to have a reverence for the law. This is where Lincoln talks about this sense of a civil religion. He means reverence for the law, as he says. And the threat, the reason why this is a concern, Lincoln goes on at great length to explain, is because this opens the door to the possibility of tyranny. This is also the great speech where Lincoln talks about the founders, the generation of the founders is dying and they're passing off. In his own lifetime, Lincoln is seeing way, and those ideas have suffered not by military attack, he says, but he uses the wonderful phrase, the silent artillery of time. That's also from this speech. That's a problem as well. That undermines the attachment of the people. All of these things open the possible door for tyranny. And here's where that point is specifically apropos to us, because if the founding is faded, these great ambitious men, which also include ambition to do tyrannical things, have great temptations. And it's not necessarily anymore to build things up. The founding has been completed, Lincoln has said. And rather than build things up, now they have the incentive, he says, to tear things down. The ambition for greatness is no longer to show and prove the possibility of self-government, but to tear it down and do something else, which might include, Lincoln says, enslaving free men. This is and there goes to that's the heart of the democratic problem Lincoln is pointing to, and what Senator Cotton is alluding to here. That's the problem with mobs. Think of the French Revolution. In the French Revolution, what did they do? They went around chopping off the heads of statues first. They went into Notre Dame and gutted it and destroyed things. But eventually, what did they do? They put a guillotine out and they started cutting the heads off of real kings and real rulers of France. And then eventually started killing each other, including those who favored the revolution because they weren't good enough.
That's part of the issue, Matt, is when there are legitimate issues that are unresolved. They are pretexts for mob rule. I want to raise with you two legitimate issues. I drove this week past Fort A.P. Hill in Virginia. There is no reason for any American fort or military installation to be named for a Confederate general, no matter how distinguished a military leader there is. There is a reason to have Washington Lee University, and I'll come to that if we need to get there. But there is no reason to have a Fort A.P. Hill or a Fort Hood. They were treasonous people.
Think back to the debate we had over the Confederate flag. The distinction here, this is why there's no reason in deliberation in this conversation. There's a principal distinction that can be made between a symbol like the flag, the Confederate flag, which symbolizes a claim of another regime to overthrow the United States and establish a new country. We don't fly the flags of other countries. The same thing with Confederate statues that actually honor the Confederacy as an institution. And I think the same thing would go for naming military bases of this country after those who committed treason and also violated their own oath by serving another claim of another country, which was trying to break away and secede from the United States.
And I also think, Matt, I don't believe that those
line we ought to hold, and that's why the Confederacy is different from the founding.
But I think those namings as well, we have to add in the purpose behind those namings is not the purpose behind the Emancipation Statute that we talked about earlier. That purpose was to hold up those people. That purpose was to honor A.P. Hill and to honor Hood and the cause for which they fought, which was the cause to destroy the Union. I don't know how it ever happened. I honestly, I've never even paid attention to it. I admit to the fact I drove past AP Hill probably 100 times without noticing, oh, they've named a base for you. It's not about AP Hill. It's not a childhood home. It's nothing like that. I believe in the study of the Civil War deeply, but not in naming.
Here's after the Civil War, most of these statues went up, funded by veterans of the Civil War in the South, which I would point out as a historical fact were almost all constructed by Democratic legislatures because the Democrats dominated the South, not the Republican Party, which was the party of Lincoln. And they erected these, and they were allowed to be erected. I mean, go to the battlefield of Gettysburg, where there are lots of Confederate statues. And there's a historical reason for doing this in many cases, which was this was part of healing the country and recognizing the war dead and this great war we've just fought. That I understand, and I want to defend that history, and I will actually defend that. Not in terms of the outcome and not in terms of the Confederacy, but as something we should all know and learn and see. But to formally recognize those individuals and that thing called the Confederacy, which was, and that is an example of systemic racism. It had the protection of slavery formally in its Constitution, not merely a temporary compromise, as in the American Constitution, which I would defend. That distinction is crucial, and that is honoring a systemic racist society. And as a formality, we should not do that. And bases and statutes that are formal endorsements by this country, by the United States on federal land, I have a problem with.
Now, I want to bring up and want to go into the last segment, Matt. Doris Miller is the name of the new USS aircraft carrier that will succeed the Ford. Doris Miller was an African-American gunner who was at Pearl Harbor and made the ultimate sacrifice. Doris Miller is a hero. And so the next aircraft carrier is going to be the first one named for an African-American. There is a aircraft carrier named for John Stennis, a senator from Mississippi who appropriated a lot of money to the United States military. Stone cold racist Democrat. Segregationist, filibustered the 1964 Civil Rights Act, had nothing to do with the Declaration of Independence. Should a carrier be named for John Stennis?
So I have to admit that's a harder one. And I would say one thing for sure, that decision to name something like that should go through the process, the deliberative process of thinking through the legislature to decide how to do that and give it its guidelines, as opposed to merely doing it on the whim of the moment. But the other thing I would generally recognize is, look, these are about human beings and human nature, and they're flawed and imperfect, and they oftentimes have done terrible things in their path. But one thing that the American society and the religious underpinnings of our society allow for is redemption and change. You have to assess that individual and the circumstances in which they acted. You referred earlier to Washington Lee College. Washington Lee College, it was Washington College, and after the war, Robert E. Lee, who led the Confederacy, and that was he committed treason to do so. Nevertheless, he became the president of a college, did not continue fighting the war, did not turn it into a holdout, did not teach all of his students to try to revive the Confederacy. He actually conducted himself in the division of the country, and that because of that legacy, it was named Washington Lee College. That's a harder call. To nuance is required to think these things through. Again, this is the problem with mobs. They're irrational, they're immediate, they're impassioned. That's not the way a democracy, a thoughtful democracy.
I want to come back after the break. I believe Washington Lee College should be left as is, and it's not my call anyway. I didn't go there. It's up to the alumni and the trustees, but I understand they renamed Washington Lee in the high school here, which was appropriate because it's a high school. I want to come back to this, Dennis, because I think senators listening to this show, I think that's an easy call. We do not want a major American warship making port calls around the United States named for a racist. We just don't. But let's talk about it after the break. And Matthew Spalding will be back. In the meantime, all things Hillsdale are at hillsdale.edu. And do not forget, relieffactor.com. When I do that with Larry Arnn, I think he's taking it. With Matt Spalding, I'm not sure Matt walks anywhere. I believe Matt is carried on a litter by Hillsdale interns, but I'm not sure. We'll find out. But if he's walking and running like you should be during this period of quarantine, safely, socially distanced, do it with relieffactor.com, helping you to moto from one place to another, especially as the weekend arrives. We are in the last segment of 15 hours of radio, and I want you to go away thinking Relief Factor will help me through the weekend, and go away thinking Honor Bound Coffee. Honor Bound Coffee, Honor Bound Coffee. If you go to honorboundcoffee.com, get a subscription, all the coffee forever that you will drink, the profits from that cup of coffee, 100% of them go to support the men and women in the American military. So join us in please making that a fountain of support for the men and women in the American military. HonorBoundCoffee.com. Come right back, America. Last segment of the Hillsdale Dialogue is next.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lanhee Chen.
ADF, fighting for those whose liberties are being violated. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Chris is in San Diego. He's back. Chris, you have a better reception now, I assume.
I'm calling actually from San Bernardino, California. My girlfriend and I, Sandra, and we love your show. We love what you stand for. We find that you are such an intelligent human being and a profound individual. And I would definitely love to run a campaign out in San Bernardino, California in 2024 because I love my current president, Mr. Donald J. Trump, and I would love to run it on the slogan, Larry Elder 2024, GAS, standing for Getting America Saged. And you should definitely have Candace Owens as your running mate. We love you, Larry. You are amazing, and I feel that many people would vote for you. Many.
Well, Chris, thank you so much, and thanks, Sandra, for me. As to my running mate, Candace Owens, if you look at the Constitution, it doesn't have any age limit for vice president. It does have an age limit for president. I'm not quite sure I'd want that as a slogan, the gas movement. Can you imagine the kinds of things that people would say about that? Here comes Elder with his gas. Yeah, you're right. Elder does have a lot of gas. Woo! I'll give him that. I've told people this many, many times. I've been urged to run for everything from mayor up to and including president of the United States. It's always very, very flattering. And I always say that if I were to run, two things could happen. I could lose, I could win. Both are bad.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thanks for listening. This is the last segment of the Hillsdale Dialogue. All things Hillsdale are found at hillsdale.edu. Wonderful college in Michigan. Send your smartest, your best, and your brightest to Hillsdale. They'll emerge better for it. You can listen to all of our dialogues dating back to 2013 at hughforhillsdale.com. I'm joined by Dean Matt Spalding, who helms Hillsdale in D.C., the graduate program on statesmanship there. Matt Spalding, I want to give you just a little bit of John Stennis, who served forever in the United States Senate, and he did a lot of good things. He did a lot of good things, but he was an ardent supporter of racial segregation. He voted, opposed the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Civil Rights Act of 1968. He signed the Southern Manifesto of 1956, supporting filibuster tactics to block or delay passage of all civil rights legislation. As a prosecutor, he thought the conviction execution of 3 sharecroppers whose murder confessions had been extracted by torture. Very mixed. At the end of his life, he voted for the Voting Rights Act extension in 1982, and he campaigned for an African-American, Mike Espy, in the first African-American to be elected since Reconstruction in his home state of Mississippi. Nevertheless, it's a United States aircraft carrier. It's the only one on which the fetching Mrs. Hewitt has spent a night. She's got a trap on the Stennis. Said it's a creepy stateroom full of Stennis memorabilia.
I agree with you 100%. I don't want anything named after Harry Byrd either. He was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And this is a real problem for the Democratic Party, by the way.
Yes.
But look, what I think we need to do is to establish a way to think this through. So this Senate committee, which is going to give them 3 years, I think that's kind of an absurdity.
It is an absurdity.
We do this very easily, it seems to me. But the question is, what's the principal distinction? The radical left today, this is not about the Confederacy. This is about racist. And once you've opened that door, and I mean, the founding was racist. This is what the 1619 Project means. That's more important than the Declaration of Independence. And that is going to give rise to a constant reconsideration of everyone at all times at a moment's notice. This is Maoist. We need to have a principled way to think this through. One principle I put down on the table, which I think we agree on, is that endorsement of the Confederacy is a problem, and we ought not to do that as the United States. That should be off the boards, gone. Deep systemic individuals who show deep racism and have been honored in connection to that, mostly coming from continuing defense of Jim Crow laws and bad things going on in the 40s and 50s. Those should go too, but we should deliberately think these things through. This gets back to Senator Cotton's speech. We do not proceed as a mob. Congress can be a mob too. It's not there in the streets.
But Matt, there is a principle. There is a principle. The principle is, did this individual put the United States on a path or pursue the path towards the Declaration of Independence principles? That is, to me, it's the easiest. Did they pursue the Declaration of Independence principles, however imperfectly they pursued them? That certainly applies to Washington Jefferson. It certainly applies to repentant segregation.
Promissory note.
Yes.
Well, that's why we honor Martin Luther King, right? America was a promissory note. The Declaration was a promissory note. You can't have a promissory note without a promise. The promise is the Declaration. Lincoln was a great statesman because in the midst of all this muddled thinking from John C. Calhoun, who invented identity politics, and crazy people who wanted to burn the Constitution, Lincoln saw through that to that promissory note. He saw the Declaration as the key, and that's why Frederick Douglass was right. He was a slave, but he saw through the Constitution. It's a freedom document because he saw the ring bolt. It's the Declaration.
And that's the principle. That's the principle by which you can strip Calhoun College away from Yale, but uphold the Jefferson Memorial. That is a principle that makes sense to strip the Stennis and to
absolutely.
See, that is the principle. I don't think it takes 3 years either. And when it takes 3 years,
it doesn't. But it does tell us something about where we are in terms of our political thought on both the left and the right. both the left and the right in many ways have backed away from the principles of the Declaration as the central idea, as Lincoln said, of America. That is America's systemic principle. It's the Declaration of Independence. It's all men are created equal. So the problem here, the attack of the left, but also the muddled thinking of the right, I think we need to go back to that. What is the systemic principle? And make a positive argument.
I agree. It's the apple of gold.
Prevent this kind of constant, let's get rid of every statue you can possibly imagine. That's what happened in Rome, and that's what happened in the French Revolution.
But we've got it. I'm just saying, we've got that principle. We don't have to spend 3 years. We've got that principle. The apple of gold surrounded by the frame of silver. We already have it. Let's just broadcast it.
I'm more than willing to go over to the senators and explain to them on record in testimony that we have a principle by which we can make this decision very quickly, and we can dispense with this overnight.
Overnight. I agree. Matt Spalding, always a pleasure to talk to you, America. All of the Hillsdale dialogues will be included at HughForHillsdale.com. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Generalissimo. Thanks, all of you. I'll be back Monday on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by